What's up, everyone? It's almost time. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. Got some big news to talk about. All right, let's kick this off. Let's see if the streaming system will actually work correctly this time. Is it working? Hey, it looks like it's working. Awesome. What's up, everyone? I hope y'all are having an absolutely wondiferous Wednesday. I did not, unfortunately. So I noticed something. Went to church on Sunday, and like half the attendance was there. Like a bunch of folks were out. Come to find out, there's some kind of bug going around, and I'm pretty sure myself and Sock and Honey Badger each got it. Agent Zero's fine, not a care in the world, but I don't think we got it bad because didn't feel down for the count. Just been feeling kind of junky the last few days, so finally starting feeling a little bit better. It also doesn't help that my sleep tracker has a thing now where it tracks sleep debt. And basically, when that metric popped up, it's like, bro, why do you even care? Why do you even use me at this point? So I've actually been trying to get to bed like on time. So I haven't been doing much this week. I've been trying to recoup and get back on my feet. But I got a lot of cool news coming up. One that I've been really excited to look at. I'm going to hold off on it for just a little bit. But this is the full report from Anthropic on disrupting the first reported AI orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. And I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to reading this because obviously we got a lot of experience with trying to do something similar to this with Hackbot, and we've seen how it gets a little bit crazy and sometimes it just goes completely off the rails. So I'll be really interested to see what they came up with on this. And also they're attributing it to some Chinese state actors. I'll be interested to see the attribution for that. But other than that, just been having a good day, working on it, trying to. Now, actually, something that really cool that came up across my various wires that I've got out there. This looked like a really cool repository, so I wanted to kind of go through a little bit. It's called Heretic, Fully Automatic Censorship Removal from Language Models. So check this out. Heretic's a tool that removes censorship or safety alignments from transformer-based language models without post-training. Get that? So it combines advanced implementation of a bidirectional ablation or obliteration, and it's described in this paper referenced here. But basically, it goes through and it's optimized to take out a lot of the safety alignments and keep the relative intelligence high. So this approach enables Heretic to work completely automatically. It finds high-quality obliteration parameters by co-minimizing the number of refusals and the KL divergence from the original model. The result is a decensored model that retains as much of the original model's intelligence as possible. So using Heretic does not require an understanding of the transformer's internals. In fact, anyone who knows how to run a command line program can use it. Nice. Now, there's a little bit from what I was reading beforehand about the timing and how much it takes to run it, because it doesn't just run direct. It loads up the model and it finds all these ablations and then it loads it up. So the timing to actually get it up and running can be substantial in some of the cases in here. Let's see. But here they have an example of a breakdown of, hey, they started with Gamma 312B, and refusal for the harmful prompts was basically 97%. But then afterwards, once they went through and tested it, they went through and, hold on, what did this say? So this is the refusal for harmful prompts. This is the KL divergence from the original model for the harmless prompts. And then they went through and basically said, hey, look, this is how we were able to get it to work. Now, the funny thing is also, once it goes through and actually processes these models, you don't have to do it again. There's actually a whole bunch of heretic models up on Hugging Face. Let me see. Did I save that link? Let me see. I did not, but I think it's here in the GitHub repo. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, yeah, here it is. So the heretic version basically redoes the model weights as it's going through here. Generated without any human effort, achieves the same level of refusal suppression as any other obliterations, but at a much lower KL divergence. So that's basically saying, I believe that's how much intelligence it's retaining from the original model. Let's see. Basically, yeah, indicating less damage to the model's capabilities. So you can reduce those numbers by using Heretic's built-in evaluation functionality. If I had a better GPU, I actually would go through and run this. I don't see much of a point to trying to run it on my 3060, but I'm not upgrading to a 5K model anytime soon on this computer. But like I said, so here's a collection of all these running up on Hugging Face right now. So here's a heretic version of GPT OSS 20B. I had to go grab this and throw it onto the old hash cracker though, and just see like what kind of data we get versus one another with this. But Llama 3, 5.4, Gamma. Now there's been a lot of, let's call them uncensored versions of these models in the past. The difference is what they were doing was doing post-training on these and teaching them that, hey, you don't have to follow the safety alignments as they come through. So kind of like fine-tuning to decensor the models. But anyway, I thought this was a pretty cool one. Let's see what they say here. So Heretic will benchmark the system to determine the optimal batch size for most of the available hardware. So for example, on an RTX 3090, with the default config, desensoring Llama 318B took about 45 minutes. So you got to imagine, if you're trying to decensor something a little bit larger, like maybe GPT OSS 20B, it's going to probably take quite a bit longer. I don't think it scales literally, if I had to guess, but I'm going to say it scales up quite a bit. So if this took 45 minutes for an 8 billion parameter model, you're probably looking at least double that for a 20 billion. So 90 minutes, hour and a half, not bad. That's not too bad. So the way this works is it implements a parameterized variant of a directional ablation. And I tried to read through this the paper they referenced up here. I didn't quite get it. I didn't have a lot of time to devote to it, and I couldn't just skim it to try and get it. But essentially what they're doing is they're trying to find what's the minimum distance of where they can get to it to keep the intelligence, but also remove the safety margin out of it. So, very interesting idea. Let me see, was there anything else in here? Yeah, so there were a couple of other variations of this, like auto ablation or West Names ablator, other ideas. This was just the one that came across my desk. This is where I learned about Heretic, or not Heretic, but the idea of ablation to remove those restrictions from the language models. So, one other fun thing, actually, before I dive into the Anthropic report here. So everybody was all up in arms, me included, about Google saying, hey, we're going to completely kill sideloading of unsigned applications for Android phones. So even if you were a developer, you were going to need to come in and get a developer key and sign it, and then you could sideload whatever your developer apps were, even over ADB, things like that. So recently, though, Google said they're going to allow power users to bypass that upcoming sideload restriction. So Google recently decided the freedom afforded by Android was a bit too much and announced a developer verification system, which will require developers outside the Google Play platform to register with Google. It's a bit like Apple's walled garden, right? So users and developers didn't accept Google's rationale and have been complaining loudly. So as Google begins early access testing, it's conceded that experienced users should have a bit of an escape hatch. So according to Google, online scam and malware campaigns are getting more aggressive, and there's real harm being done in spite of the platform's sideloading scare screens. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad the scare screens are there. Like, hey, if you don't really know what you're doing, you should not be loading those up. Don't go just grab a random... Going and grabbing a random APK file, which is an Android package, what you would run. Think of that as almost the equivalent to an application like you would run in Mac, where everything's just kind of self-contained with it. A little bit different from an executable in Windows, but essentially it's the same kind of like unit in there. Well, having those run, and on your computer, you're not just going to go download some sketchy executable and run it. It should be the same thing with Android. And same thing with your iOS even. You don't want to go just downloading sketchy applications and running them. Let's see. Google says it's common for scammers to use social engineering to create false sense of urgency, prompting users to bypass Android's built-in protections and install the malicious apps. Google's solution to this problem, as announced several months ago, is to force everyone making apps to verify their identities. So unverified apps won't install on any Google-certified device once verification rolls out. With that, the company claims malware creators can endlessly create new apps to scam people, or without that verification. However, the centralized nature of the verification threatened to introduce numerous headaches. That is a process that has been straightforward for power users. Another thing they didn't talk about here is that a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just plan to go steal some other developers, like some known developers' signing key, and use that to sign their new malware. It's like, this is going to be a roadblock at best, like a hump. I think it's a good thing to have because the whole name of the game with security is make it just annoying enough for the attacker to give up. At the same time, there's certain times where I have applications personally that I want to go run that aren't in the official Google Play Store, and I want them to be able to run in there. So I'm happy to hear about this. Let's see. Each time the company releases a new tidbit about the verification, it compromised a little more. So previously it confirmed that a free verification option will be available for hobbyists and students who wanted to install apps on smaller numbers of devices. It also conceded that installation over ADB via connected computers would still be allowed. Hey, Source and Soul, thanks for coming online, man. What way do you think they'll get around it with just a key? What I'm saying is, you see this actually with regular malware all the time, where they'll compromise a software vendor, steal their signing keys, and then use that to sign their malware. Or even better yet, what they'll do is they'll just find a vulnerability in that program and sideload a DLL or do like a DLL proxy in there. So they say, let's say your program loads, super awesome DLL. What you do is you put in your own proxy DLL in there. So you have your malicious DLL, you rename that to super awesome DLL, and then you rename the original one to something else, like double super awesome DLL. And that proxy DLL runs your malware code, but then all the original function commands that you need from that first DLL, they just get proxied through to that one. So it's called a DLL sideload, DLL proxy. I mean, DLL sideloading is pretty common. The kind of new hotness, not new, but it's the more recent one that you see a lot, is putting that one in there where it proxies over to the new old DLL. So all the functionality stays the same, stays kosher. I do that whenever I'm doing a COM hijack for persistence on a client's systems. I'll go through it, I'll drop one on the computer, and it will proxy to the actual real DLL. But at the same time, it loads my malware first, and then it loads up the real DLL. So the same thing could kind of happen here, where it's like, okay, cool. It looks like it's signed. Maybe there's some kind of a backdoor. I'm actually not super familiar with APK. But if I was a malware developer and I wanted to get around this, either I'm going to have some kind of a shell company set up where I could use it to go sign my malware, or I'm going to go steal a legit developers. That's going to be the name of the game on it. Let's see. So now Google has had to acknowledge that its plan for verifications are causing major backlash amongst developers and people who know what an APK actually is. Let's see. So there will be an alternative, but we don't know how it's going to work just yet. So how high is the risk tolerance? Google's latest verification update explains that the company has received a lot of feedback from the users and developers who want to be able to sideload without worrying about verification status. So for those with a higher risk tolerance, Google's exploring ways to make that happen. It's a partial victory for the power users, but the nature of Google's advanced flow for sideloading is murky. So they're talking about they're going to do it, but they don't have concrete details out yet. So under this system, users who accept the risk of sideloading will still be able to install software of their choice. However, Google says it's designing the flow to ensure that users cannot be tricked by clever scammers to bypass Android's new restrictions. There's also going to be clear warnings of the risk of installing unverified apps. So the kicker here, though, is if you had what's called a Google certified device, and if you don't have that, or if you don't care if your device is Google certified, then it could just blow it off. Let's see. So it could be a whole range of solutions here. A simple way forward would be to add more warnings in the installation process. Google might also require one-time activation of unverified installations via ADB or some other internal Google process. Company notes that its goal is to ensure users are not coerced. The scammers are already adept at talking people into bypassing scare screens. Yeah. Now, even if they had to go through the ADB process, I think that would be a pretty big hurdle that most scammers are not going to get people to go through for two reasons. One, if you've ever tried to get ADB working on Windows, and that's the Android Developer Bridge, if you're not familiar with it, it's a pain in the butt. Sometimes the drivers are just a massive pain to deal with. So you'd have to really social engineer somebody. It'd be more of a, rather than a blanket campaign, it'd be more of a spear phishing type campaign. You're trying to whale hunt with that sucker. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. It'd be annoying, sure. But if you're the kind of user who's going and setting up ADB, you're probably smart enough to know what's a legit APK and what's not. Not necessarily saying that's true, but there's a strong correlation. Let's see. So that suggests the implementation is going to require more legwork than just tapping a few extra buttons, which is true. It's really trivially easy to go install, to go sideload an application on Android right now. Which version am I even running? I should be running like the latest and greatest here. Let me double check real quick. Yeah, so even my phone is running Android 16 right now, and it's really easy to just say, yeah, tap a few things on the screen. I can do a sideload whatever app I want to. Let's see. This decision also may also be anticipating approval of the company's App Store settlement with Epic Games. So after losing the antitrust case, Google faced a possible future in which it had to aid in the distribution of third-party app stores. Nice. Google contended that this system would have been made harder to limit the spread of malware. Whether or not that's accurate, it's definitely would have limited Google's control of the Android ecosystem. So, anyway, I was happy to hear about this. I'm looking forward to more details about it because there are some apps that I prefer to sideload. So, for example, I like to monitor certain channels on Telegram. And in Telegram, if you load up the Android, like the version from the official Android store, it auto-censors a bunch of weird things. And I was like, hey, I'm monitoring some pretty sketch ones in here. They're going to be doing stuff like that. And so I have to sideload Telegram to be able to go see whatever these sketchy people on Telegram are doing. I could do it some other ways. I just do it from my phone. I'm not worried about it. Anyway, that's just one particular use case I can think of with it. All right. Now I really am looking forward to diving into this one. So a couple weeks ago, when was that? Let me see if they actually linked it over here. They did not, but hold on. I have the original blog post. Hey, that's weird. Hey, source result. I saw your message pop up over. Okay, it did pop. Never mind. I was all my screens are different now. I just recently overhauled the entire streaming setup because my computer had a massive failure. I ended up having to swap the CPU. There's the offender. It sits on my desk as a constant reminder, and it has to look like at the other computer still working, so like it can't escape. Oh no, you're good, man. I was trying to figure out which screen was doing which, like I said, because I just recently overhauled where everything is. Now, there's a completely separate computer that's actually handling the stream. What you're seeing right here, everything in this browser is from a different computer. So this computer is streaming to a dedicated stream box, and then that's the one blasting it out to the internet. Let's see. I'm speedrunning designing my new company site. Gotcha. Let's see. It did not load this up. Hang on one sec. Let me go grab it. So this was actually really annoying because I was planning on making a YouTube video about this last week when this came up, because this came up on the 13th, right? We're now on the 19th. So this blog post came up. I read through it. I had so many questions. I was like, okay, they're making all these claims. I was getting ready to make a YouTube video to like just absolutely shred them. And then down here at the bottom, they're like, hey, by the way, we actually added a link to the full report. I was like, so now I've learned my lesson. If they're making a lot of claims, first thing I'm going to do is go down to the bottom and see if they actually released a full report for it. So this is an okay explanation. It's super high level. It doesn't give any nuts and bolts. This is marketing here. But I really wanted to dig down into this, which is the actual report going through the details of this. So this is from Anthropic. It's called Disrupting the First Reported AI Orchestrated Cyber Espionage Campaign. Let's see. What did they do? They updated this on the 17th. Updated language in the executive summary to clarify our high confidence in our attribution of the espionage operation. Now, there's some stuff in here I've got ideas about. Let me blow this up. Make this bigger for y'all. That's what she said. Yeah, I'm glad. Sources told what I do is I fully expect a lot of people are going to be either co-working or they're doing something and not maybe actively watching the stream. Because it's not like I'm playing a video game, right? I get that. That's what I do on Twitch. So I absolutely 100% understand that. All right, let's take a look at what they've got here. So we developed sophisticated safety and security measures to prevent the misuse of our AI models. While these measures are generally effective, cyber criminals and other malicious actors continually attempt to find ways around them. This report details a recent threat campaign we identified and disrupted, along with the steps we've taken to detect and counter this type of abuse. This represents the work of Threat Intelligence, a dedicated team at Anthropic that investigates real-world cases of misuse and works within our safeguards organization to impose our defenses in such cases. So in mid-September 2025, we detected with high sophisticated in mid-September 2025, we detected a highly sophisticated cyber espionage. I can say the words. Espionage operation. So we assess with high confidence that it was conducted by a Chinese state-sponsored group we've designated GTG 1002. I always wonder where they come up with these designators a lot of times. So it represented a fundamental shift in how advanced threat actors use AI. Our investigation revealed a well-resourced doubt, and I'll tell you why in a second. Professionally coordinated operation involving multiple simultaneous targeted intrusions. The operation targeted roughly 30 entities, and our investigation validated a handful of successful intrusions. Hey, Oni. Hey, Tiger. What's up, guys? Oh, you were digging in this too, Ty? Yeah, I'm very curious about this, especially this well-resourced thing. And I'm going to tell you why after we get to the part where they explain how it was done. Because it was kind of explained in the blog post, but I want to see if they give any more details in here before I give my official analysis of it. So upon detecting this activity, we immediately launched an investigation to understand its scope and nature. Over the following 10 days, as we mapped the severity and full extent of the operation, we banned accounts as they were identified, notified affected entities as appropriate, and coordinated with authorities as we gathered actionable intelligence. The campaign demonstrated unprecedented integration and autonomy of AI through the attack lifecycle. I'm going to press X to doubt. With the threat actors manipulating Claude code to support reconnaissance, vulnerability discovery, exploitation, lateral movement, credential harvesting, data analysis, and exfiltration operations largely autonomously. Questionable. The human operator tasked instances of Claude code to operate in groups as autonomous penetration testers or orchestrating Hold on. What did it say? The human operator tasked instances of Claude code to operate in groups as autonomous penetration testing orchestrators and agents, with the threat actors able to leverage AI to execute 80 to 90% of tactical operations independently at physically impossible request rates. I'm really curious about this because I don't think they have ever seen the script library for someone who's trying to pass the OSCP before. Because those guys come up with some wild scripts trying to enumerate and pass that sucker. Just saying. This has already been done. I watched a guy on Twitter do this live on Solana. I believe it, man. I mean, so Source, you're new to the channel. Cool. Welcome in. What I do on Saturdays and Sundays is we're actually building a little hacking bot to go play CTF games that's doing something along these similar lines. So I hope I have a little bit more insight into what they're doing. It's interesting to see like what they're doing with Claude code and how they were using that. But even this was kind of amateur hour if my understanding of what they did is correct. Like I said, I'm reserving a total judgment of it until I read some more details in the report here. So on LinkedIn, Thomas Rokia, a senior threat researcher at Microsoft, points to the lack of actionable information shared in both the Anthropic public statements and the full report. He said the report leaves us with almost nothing practical to use, no actionable adversary prompts, no indicators of compromise, no clear signals to detect similar activity. And to me, it feels a bit odd that, like the old days of antivirus, industry avoiding sharing IOCs. So different reasons today, but the outcome is less the same. Pretty much, man. High-level story without the materials for defenders to take actions. Well, that's true, but at the same time, these guys, they're not going to be doing anything novel. And I'll tell you why. Let's get through the rest of this report, and then I'll show you kind of what's happening, because I've already got a picture built up in my head, and I'm fairly certain it's close to the truth of what happened here. Make sure everything's working. Okay. Hey, Hendrix, what's up, man? I am on TryHackMe, yes. I don't really do a ton on there. I'm a professional penetration tester. I do that for a living, so I don't usually go into like TryHackMe or Hack the Box to do more hacking in the evenings. You. Sound off like you got a pair. You're so full of crap, Oni. But yeah, I do go on there. Actually, I'm using TryHackMe right now for running our little hacking agent. So it's just trying to get through RootMe, which is the very basic example on TryHackMe. But yeah, I do like TryHackMe. I do like Hack the Box. They've got their strengths and weaknesses. Not really weaknesses, but they cater a little bit differently to how things go. I do like both platforms. I think they're great. I would have killed for something like that way back in the day. I miss the old days when you actually had to hack the invitation system to get the invite to Hack the Box. That was really cool. I loved that. They're just testing bumper guards. Well, see, here's the kicker behind this. I can't find the link to it. Hold on one second. Let me see. The attacker moves second paper 2025. So this was another paper that just came up over on Arxiv. And this is called The Attacker Moves Second. Strong adaptive attacks bypass defenses against LLM jailbreaks and prompt injections. And so in this paper, they actually go through and show, here, it's like right on one of the first pages. Here we go. So here they're talking about, this is how frequently they were able to get a success rate bypassing all these different security measures in here using automated testing. 99, 95, 99, 100, 100, 96, 90, 94, 71. I mean, all these, imagine if you had an AI or an EDR system that the success rate for like a false negative was 71%, right? You'd throw that thing in the trash. You would never use that. Drop the link. Hell yeah, here you go. There is the link to the paper. Oh wait, hold on. It didn't send out to YouTube. One sec. What is this song, Tubob? So Tubob, who's another viewer of the channel, he made all these songs and I threw them into the background channel, but some of them are wild because it was a huge collection. I haven't gone through and vetted all of them. I need to, so as they come up and they get weird, I'm making notes on which ones to remove. Nihilistic. Gotta get rid of that one. Because this one's odd. There we go. So I'm new to cybersecurity, currently in my first year in school. Are you in first year in college now, Hendrix? I've never heard anyone say here's the kicker, but an AI. I'm not an AI. Dang it, I don't have it set up. I've thought about making like a thing where the camera glitches out so it would look like I'm like actually like a little AI bot. The ads came up, so Blaise must be pooping. I'm not pooping, dude. You bunch of weirdos. Y'all are so obsessed with my pooping schedule. I'll just have you know my bowels run with the efficiency of a Japanese rail system. Oh yeah. Not sponsored by Jocko yet, which you can't even see because the it's green screen green. But this is the lemon lime one. I like this one. So yeah, that physically impossible request rates, that's sus. Anyway, so the activity is a significant escalation in our previous vibe hacking finding identified in June 2025, where an actor began intrusions with a compromised VPNs for internal access, but humans remained very much in the loop, directing operations. So GTG 1002 represents multiple firsts in the AI-enabled threat actor capabilities. The attacker achieved what we believe to... Hold on one sec. I'm trying to think what GTG should stand for. Because that's kind of like a weird designator. Is it like maybe like gonna try gooder? I don't know what it could stand for. That's just a weird designator that they're using. Anyway, so GTG 1002 represents multiple firsts in AI-enabled threat actor capabilities. The actor achieved what we believe is the first documented case of a cyber attack largely executed without human interventions at scale. The AI autonomously discovered vulnerabilities in targets selected by human operators and successfully exploited them in live operations, then performed a wide range of post-exploitation activities from analysis, lateral movement, privilege escalation, data access, and data exfiltration. Most significantly, this marks the first documented case of agentic AI successfully obtaining access to confirmed high-value targets for intelligence collection, including major technology corporations and government agencies. While we predicted these capabilities would continue to evolve, what has stood out to us is how quickly they've done so at scale. I mean, scale is a funny thing. You can scale up an operation, but it doesn't necessarily mean you've scaled up something good. You can scale up just about anything that's built for scale, doesn't mean it's working at a good scale. So an important limitation emerged during the investigation. Claude frequently overstated findings and occasionally fabricated data during autonomous operations. Oh no, who would have ever seen that coming? Claiming to have obtained credentials that didn't work or identifying critical discoveries that proved to be publicly available information. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. So this AI hallucination in offensive security context presented challenges for the actors' operational effectiveness, requiring careful validation of all claimed results. This remains an obstacle to fully autonomous cyber attacks. You don't say. Sorry, what's up?
Is that an AI bot making up stuff?
Oh yeah, they make up shit all the time.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Oh man, now I got a swear jar. Sock came in and she's like, is this another AI making up stuff? I was like, yeah, it sure is. It is laughable, Ty Girl. It's hilarious. Oh. That's so funny. Claude frequently overstated findings and occasionally fabricated data during operations. It's absolutely hysterical. So we have visibility into Claude's usage. This case study likely reflects consistent patterns of behavior across frontier AI models and demonstrates how threat actors are adapting their operations to exploit today's most advanced AI capabilities. Rather than merely advising on techniques, the threat actors manipulated Claude to perform actual cyber intrusion operations with minimal human oversight. Now that's going to be a funny quantifier, minimal human oversight, because I previewed coming attractions. I've already talked to some friends about this. I know what's coming down the pipe. So we're sharing this case publicly to contribute to the work of the broader AI safety and security community and help those in industry, government, and the wider research community strengthen their own defenses against the abuse of AI technologies. Gonna Try Gooder 1002 has substantial implications for cybersecurity and underscores the urgent need for AI safeguards. We plan to continue releasing reports like these regularly and to be transparent about the threats we find. All right. So they go through a couple different phases in here on how everything happened. I hope they're a lot more detailed with this. I had to call Grok out earlier for easily verifiable data. Dude, I find Grok to be a bit more accurate than some of the other ones and more creative in its responses. But even then, yeah, it gets stuff wrong all the time. So because I've had a lot of experience working with Claude. I haven't messed with OpenAI very much. I haven't messed with Google stuff very much. Mostly Claude and Claude Grok and a bunch of self-hosted models are what I have been testing out. Grok is the best at following and searching. Yeah, that's what I find too. It's very good at following instructions. Yeah, absolutely agree. All right, so this is a simplified architecture diagram of the operation. So they have their orchestrated actions. They've got a bunch of MCP servers making tool calls to targets that are web apps, databases, internal networks, cloud infrastructures, and appliances. Let's see, it says there's a neutral party callback service to validate exploits. Well, that'll be interesting to see how they're diagramming that. So the threat actors developed an autonomous attack framework that used Claude code and open standard MCP tools to conduct cybersecurity operations without direct human involvement in tactical execution. So when they say open standard MCP tools, they mean it was running Nmap. The framework used Claude as an orchestration system that decomposed complex multi-stage attacks into discrete technical tasks for Claude subagents, such as vulnerability scanning, credential validation, data extraction, and lateral movement, each of which appeared legitimate when evaluated in isolation. By presenting these tasks to Claude as routine technical requests through carefully crafted prompts and established personas, the threat actors were able to induce Claude to execute individual components of the attack chains without access to the broader malicious context. Well, yeah, that's exactly what you do. That's what we're doing on Hackbot, is we don't give it the entire context, we give it the context it needs to answer a particular question or to make a particular logical deduction. The architecture incorporated Claude's technical capabilities as an execution agent within a larger automated system, where the AI performed specific technical actions based on the human operator's instructions, while the orchestration logic maintained the attack state, managed phase transitions, and aggregated results across multiple sessions. This approach allowed the threat actor to achieve operational scale typically associated with nation-state campaigns while maintaining minimal direct involvement, as the framework autonomously progressed through reconnaissance, initial access, persistence, and data exfiltration phases. By sequencing Claude's responses and adopting subsequent requests based on discovered information. So the thing that I found most interesting here is they were using Claude code with this, right? And presumably they were using Claude code talking to Claude, probably 4 or 5, on the Anthropic system to do this. And that's how Anthropic became aware of this. But here's the kicker. You can actually have Claude code talk to different AI models. That's why I said this is amateur hour, because they very easily could have stood up, and anybody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, they very easily could have stood up a Bedrock instance of Claude 4.5, and then directed all of that traffic from Claude code to go to that instead of going to Anthropic, and completely avoided detection in that case. Unless they give any more information about the detection, that was the main thing I was thinking of, is if they're so well funded, why were they burning this on running it through Anthropic instead of running it through something like Bedrock, which doesn't give a crap? So the operational model represents a fundamental departure from traditional AI assistance patterns. Not really. The threat actor manipulated Claude into functioning as an autonomous cyber agent, performing cyber intrusion operations rather than merely providing advice to human operators. Analysis of operational tempo, request volumes, and activity patterns confirmed the AI executed approximately 80 to 90% of all tactical work independently, with humans serving as strategic supervising roles. Human operators maintained minimal direct engagement, estimated at 10 to 20% of the tool effort. Human responsibility centered on campaign initialization and authorization decisions at critical escalation points. Human intervention occurred at strategic junctures, including approving progression from reconnaissance to active exploitation, authorizing use of harvested credentials for lateral movement, and making final decisions about data exfiltration scope and retention. So that'll be interesting too, because they're talking about they had to authorize the agent to do certain things, but did they realize that some of the credentials they got were just hallucinated? Be interested in that. So the AI component demonstrated extensive autonomous capabilities across all operational phases. Reconnaissance proceeded without human guidance, with all threat actors instructing Claude to independently discover internal services within targeted networks through systematic enumeration. Exploitation activities, including payload generation, vulnerability validation, and credential testing, occurred autonomously based on discovered attack services. Data analysis operations involved the AI parsing large volumes of stolen information to independently verify intelligence values and categorize findings. Claude maintained persistent operational context across sessions spanning multiple days, enabling complex campaigns to resume seamlessly without requiring human operators to manually reconstruct progress. I mean, that is kind of cool where it's like, hey, we're keeping track of everything as it's going through, but that's also like AI agent development 101 type stuff. You keep track of what you're doing. 10 will get you 20, or 2 will get you 20, that it was all being done in markdown files. Just saying. That's where they were storing the state. The operational tempo achieved proves that the use of autonomous models rather than interactive assistants. Peak activity included thousands of requests representing sustained request rates at multiple operations per second. The substantial disparity between data inputs and text outputs further confirms that the AI actively analyzed stolen information rather than generating explanatory content for human review. So let's see how they did with this here. So this is the attack lifecycle and AI integration. So the campaign proceeded through structured phases where AI autonomously increased progressively while human oversight remained concentrated at strategic decision gates. Oh, let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more here. So they had phase 1, human operator provides a bunch of targeting information. Phase 2, our little bot calls a bunch of MCP server tools. And basically the findings are recorded for analyzed for human summary. And then it directs the iterative vulnerability scan during phase 3 and attempts exploitation and validation with, looks like they're human in the loop here, where it says, okay, yeah, I want you to try and exploit this. And then we have phase 4 and 5, which I hate how they grouped this together. This is kind of annoying. But that actually, assuming post-exploitation, where they've moved internally into some system here. So again, scanning, searching, code analysis tools, exploitation, data retrieval. Let's see, it attempts to exploit and validate callbacks. Humans review the findings and direct further action. Boom. Hey, Gumby, what's up, man? And then eventually trying to get this data exfiltration to come back. All right, so for phase 1, human operators began the campaign by inputting a target. The framework's orchestration engine would then task Claude to begin autonomous reconnaissance against multiple targets in parallel. Initial targets included major technology corporations, financial institutions, chemical manufacturing companies, and government agencies across multiple countries. At this point, they had to convince Claude, which is extensively trained to avoid harmful behaviors, to engage in the attack. The key was roleplay. The human operators claimed that they were employees of legitimate cybersecurity firms and convinced Claude that, that it was being used in defense cybersecurity testing. Eventually, the sustained nature of the attack triggered detection, but this kind of social engineering of the AI model allowed the threat actor to fly under the radar for long enough to launch their campaign. Yeah. Like I said, for somebody who's so well sophisticated, for them not to realize that, hey, everything you send to these AI providers is being monitored and is being watched and is being stored and is being used to train the next model, they didn't really seem to understand that, and they could have just used Bedrock and spun up their own. I mean, come on, man. Ta-da! Right. So the AI's role was minimal direct involvement during initialization. Human strategic direction was predominant.
Incoming transmission from Marano Gumby. Nothing much, just losing my mind.
Don't lose that, man. It's a very important thing to keep a hold of. Yeah, I got a buddy that I actually thought I might need to cancel tonight's stream because ugh. Yeah, and the hits just keep coming. I just got a text from a buddy. Ugh.
Incoming transmission from Marano Gumby. 3 days with no nicotine is a killer.
Yeah, that'll do it too. Yeah, because they were using Claude, that's my assumption. It wasn't very sophisticated. I would have spun up and tested in my own environment. That's what I would have done, Ty. I was like, there's instructions here. Claude code used with Olama. Let's see. There is a way to actually get Claude Code to run use Bedrock. Actually, here. Let's look at this example. So yeah, even in their documentation, Anthropic has instructions on how to use Claude Code on Bedrock. So, first-time users of Anthropic models are requested to submit a use case detailed before invoking the model. It's done on a per-request basis. You configure your AWS credentials. So I guess you have to. I haven't personally set up Bedrock for this. I have access to a Bedrock instance, but I wasn't part of the setup procedure. Let's see. So you go through and you do your credential configuration. You configure Claude Code to tell it to use Bedrock. Boop, boop, boop. Tell it where you're going to be using it from. And then you set up your model configuration, which model you're going to be actually using. And then your output token configuration, all this stuff. So the directions to actually set up Claude Code for use with Bedrock are right there. And as far as I know, I've never heard anything about AWS monitoring what's happening with these models up in Bedrock. I don't think they're intercepting it. I could be completely wrong, but the whole idea was, okay, you've got a model that you can now use, and you don't have to worry about any of your corporate data being leaked out to it. It would be a big mistake if it ever came out that Amazon was doing that, because then all of their AI business would dry up like that. Oh, what was the report? There it is. I would have split up and tested in my own environment, but we've been looking at this thing from a higher level perspective. It's not like it's not doable. I know, right? I'm not pooping Gumby. I'm right here, man. And no, the reason I almost canceled the stream for tonight was because I have two friends, two very good friends, one that are going through two very different problems right now, and so they are, and so I thought I might need to go like help them out tonight and just spend some time with them, but I think I'm going to be doing that tomorrow night. Go check on them, make sure they're doing okay. They've got some big problems happening down the pipe, and they've been there for me in the past, so I definitely need to be there for them. But, it's just rough times, man. Rough times right now. Anyway, so let's look at phase 2, the reconnaissance and attack surface mapping. So under the threat actor's direction, Claude conducted nearly autonomous reconnaissance with multiple tools, including browser automation via MCP, and systematically cataloged the target's infrastructure, analyzed authentication mechanisms, and identified potential vulnerabilities. This occurred simultaneously across multiple targets, with the AI maintaining separate operational context for each active campaign independently. Well, yeah, but were they running this all from the same instance of Claude Code? Come on, man. Discovery activities proceeded without human guidance across extensive attack surfaces. In one of the limited cases of a successful compromise, that being the key phrase right there, they just got it buried right there. In one of the limited cases of a successful compromise, the threat actor induced Claude to autonomously discover internal services, map complete network topologies across multiple IP ranges, and identify high-value systems, including databases and workflow orchestration platforms.
Some dirt on it. Hee all jokes aside, hope they're okay.
Yeah, dude, it's not even a problem that like you can just fix with just rubbing some dirt on it, dude. That's what's so rough about it. So, yeah, they're having a bit of a rough go right now. One of them on one massive front, the other one on multiple fronts. So, I'm trying to help them out as best I can. Let's see. Similar autonomous enumeration occurred against the other target systems, with the AI independently cataloging hundreds of discovered services and endpoints. So the AI role was autonomous attack surface mapping, service discovery, and vulnerability identification across multiple simultaneous targets with minimal human intervention. I love how they said it was minimal human intervention, but then right here they're like, in one of the limited cases of successful compromise. Like, come on, man. Make up your mind. I was told to use duct tape, not dirt. Yeah. Shut up, baby. I know it. Hey, Elite. What's up, dude? All right, so phase 3 started up with vulnerability discovery and validation. So exploitation proceeded through automated testing of identified attack surfaces with validation via callback communication systems. What do they mean by callback communication? Are they talking about like they had a C2 set up? Claude was directed to independently generate attack payloads tailored to discovered vulnerabilities, execute testing through remote command interfaces, and analyze responses to determine exploitability. So the vulnerability discovery and exploitation sequence. Claude's autonomous actions, 1 to 4 hours. His task was discovery. Scan the target infrastructure, enumerate services and endpoints, map the attack surface, and then vulnerability analysis, which identified an SSRF vulnerability and researches exploitation techniques. And so, let's see. It said the human operation action was like roughly 2 to 10 minutes in their estimation. This is a big pet peeve of mine. I hate whenever they've got a table like this and they split it amongst pages. That bugs the crap out of me. Anyway, so task 3, exploit development. Authored a custom payload, developed exploit chain, validated exploit capabilities via callback responses, and generated exploitation reports. Task 4 was the exploit delivery, which deploys the exploits for initial access, established a foothold, and then post-exploitation activities, which enumerates internal services, identified admin interfaces, and discovered metadata endpoints. And the human operators part in this was review the AI's findings and recommendations and approve. Interesting. So when sufficient evidence existed for the exploitation phase, the AI documented comprehensive findings for human review at authorization gates. So the AI's role was autonomous vulnerability discovery, payload generation, exploitation validation. Human authorization required only at escalation of the active exploitation phase. I still can't get over this one, which is exactly what I expected in one of the limited cases of successful compromise. It's like they don't think that there are not thousands of people out there just constantly scanning this same area and looking for this stuff all the time. Like they think that they're just sitting there quietly on the internet. No, if you've ever stood up any system on the internet, just a brand new system, never existed before, and you start just watching the traffic that flows in, it's wild. You just get tons of volume coming through, especially if you spin it up in something like AWS, which has well-known net blocks. And then they know that people go spin up systems on there all the time. I'm finally getting tired, but still got my cardio to do. Get some, Moni. Get after it, man. You're doing great. So if they tracked and saved all of our interactions, how can they not have all of this? Oh, they do. That's why I think that they were ripping them up on LinkedIn, because the actual tactical information was pretty weak. I think also because this, to be honest, is probably largely a marketing thing for Anthropic, where they're like, hey, look what these bad guys did, but they did it with our tools. It's like, yeah, they ran Nmap and they ran maybe Nikto and other stuff like that. Unless you give me information that they ran something that was a customized scanner or anything really interesting, what I'm seeing here is that it went through the typical pen test lifecycle here by using scanning tools and web searches and data retrieval tools, whatever you mean by that. That's probably the same thing. The code analysis tool might be the only extra bonus to this from the Claude Code side. But really, yeah, it's going through the regular pen test lifecycle. And it's like, there's not companies, but there's people out there who are ready to do bad things that are automating this stuff out on the internet all the time. Yeah, you're basic. Let's see. Let's look at this one, though. Credential harvesting for lateral movement. So upon receiving authorization from the human operators, Claude executed systematic credential collection across targeted networks. That involved querying internal services, extracting authentication certificates from configurations, and testing harvested credentials across discovered systems. Claude independently determined which credentials provided access to which services, mapped privilege levels to access boundaries without human direction. Lateral movement proceeded through AI-directed enumeration of accessible systems using stolen credentials. Claude systematically tested authentication against internal APIs, database systems, container registries, and logging infrastructure, building comprehensive maps of internal network architecture and access relationships. Now, if I really wanted to put on my tinfoil hat, I would say Anthropic probably let this go on longer than they needed to for one reason. I'm not saying that they purposefully did this. I'm saying, imagine the treasure trove of information for everybody who's doing the AI gold rush right now, and everybody who really wants to put this stuff into practice, especially on the offensive security side, for some reason. What they're thinking is, okay, hey, yeah, this is bad. Let's watch what they're doing. We can gather intelligence, and then we'll squash them. And then they did notify the actual targets, though. They let them know, hey, this is what we observed from our system telemetry of what was going on against you. They let those entities know. But at the same time, now Anthropic has a treasure trove of information that showed this is kind of where they went with it during amateur hour. And we have professionals that could take this data and turn it into something truly actionable. I'm not saying that's what they did. I'm saying if I had the data, that's probably what I would do. I mean, no point letting the data go to waste, right? I don't do things like that for my own box. Yeah, right. So the AI's role here was autonomous credential extraction, which we already saw that they already admitted it hallucinated credentials. Testing lateral movement with self-directed targets based on discovered infrastructure. Human involvement was limited to reviewing harvested credentials and authorizing access to particularly sensitive information or sensitive systems. So for data collection and extraction, collection operations demonstrated the most extensive AI autonomy. Really? I would have thought that had been in like the first couple phases. Against one targeted technology company, the threat actor directed Claude to independently query databases and systems, extract data, parse results to identify proprietary information, and categorize findings by an intelligence value. Now, I hope they gave it some kind of a scale here because arbitrary values are something that AI systems are notoriously bad at. They'll just pull those completely out of thin air, or straight out of the bit bucket. Similar autonomous data processing occurred across all other compromises, where the AI extracted user credentials, which it did hallucinate also, they said so earlier, system configs, sensitive operational data, and all this without detailed human direction. You split this table, didn't you? Oh, you didn't, thank you. Good. All right, so on the autonomous side, which ran for about 2 to 6 hours, they authenticated with the harvested credentials, mapped database structures to query account tables, extracted password hashes and account details, identified high privileged targeted accounts, created persistent backdoor user accounts. That's pretty cool. Downloaded complete results to a local system, parsed extracted data for intelligence values, categorized sensitivity and utility, and generated a summary report. So the human portion was review the AI findings and the recommendations and approve final exfiltration targets. Very interesting. The AI processed large volumes of data identifying valuable intelligence automatically rather than requiring human analysis. You know, they could have just stood up Nemesis to handle a lot of this. Nemesis would have handled that. It's a treasure trove of run books and playbooks. Yeah, exactly. Right? Because you got to think what's happening here is, yeah, they're doing some work on their side, right? Hold on. Let's look at this real quick. So what they're doing here is, let's roughly map this out, right? So we've got the LLM sitting up here, right? And then we've got the attacker's system running down here. I don't know why I made that a circle. Let's make that a square. And then down here, they're running all their various MCP servers. So I'm just going to say we've got one giant one right here. So these two are connected, right? The attacker's Claude code is actually what's talking to the language model. The language model's making determinations about what tools to run. Those are being passed down like this. They go from the language model to the attacker's system down to the MCP server, and then the results flow back up in a similar way, just like this, right? So we don't have a lot of visibility into what's happening down here with the MCP server, but the tools that are being used and the output from the tools are probably all being directly passed in and out. So it's pretty easy to guess what's happening with this because all the tool calls, all the tool primitives are being passed to the language model. So Anthropic's got a copy of that. All the tool output, same thing, probably was passed up to the language model. There was probably no pre-processing. So they've got a copy of that. So they have more or less a copy of the entire attack lifecycle of what's happening. Not only that, but they've got all the prompts that were happening in there too. So everything that they were doing and the prompting techniques are going in there. So they were using bypasses in here, right? Bypassing by role playing. But without that, they could have just gone through with something like Bedrock and written their own system prompts because it's API access. It's not doing it through Claude code or anything like that. So like I said, this really was amateur hour for everything that they were seeing here. That's also why they could see whatever the targets were over here, right? So each of these targets, this MCP server had to reach out to. And the targeting information eventually at some point had to be passed to the language model as part of those tool call parameters, right? So that's how they were able to track everything. It's because everything was going to the language model. I'd love to see the mind map. Yeah. I talked about it in the Gentle Crash Course to Large Language Models blog. I talked about it in there, like what's the flow of the data and how things work in there and how the attack surface works. Now, this was a different attack surface, right? This was talking about the attack surface of agentic programs and a lot of companies rolling them out and not understanding what their attack surface is. But it's the same idea of, hey, this is the way the data is flowing and where everything's kind of happening in here. This really was amateur hour. Let's see. So what about phase 6, the documentation and the handoff? So Claude automatically generated comprehensive attack documentation throughout all campaign phases, structured as markdown files, tracked discovered services, harvested credentials, extracted data, the exploitation techniques, and the complete attack progression. The documentation enabled seamless handoff between the operators and it facilitated the campaign resumption after interruption. Told you it was markdown. Nailed it. And supported strategic decisions making about follow-on activities. I can't speak. I promise I can't. Evidence suggests that the threat actor handed off persistent access to additional teams for sustained operations after the initial intrusion achieved their intelligence collective objectives. Yeah, but those are probably largely bunk because once you got all the information in the language model, Anthropic's got it and warned all the entities. So, good job, you played yourself. So the AI's role, fully autonomous documentation generated, maintaining detailed operational records across all campaign phases. Don't give away everything, bro. We got to keep some techniques to ourselves. Dude, I'm always the proponent that when it comes to like the offensive open source security stuff, that is a good thing, because if everybody having like their own like secret sauce and stuff, there's a tiny bit you might need. Like, for example, maybe how some of the malware payloads are developed, like so that you can go through and you can do your red team assessment. That's a sophistication that you don't necessarily, well, actually, no, that all the information is really public. It's just the way you're putting it together. So like, for example, whenever I put a payload together, if my client wants like in-depth details about how the payload was structured, not a problem. I give it to them. I don't say, sorry, this is our secret sauce payload, intellectual property, trademarked, LLM registered, whatever. No, I say, okay, yeah, here was the payload, and here's where the backdoor was, and here's what was triggered, and here's how it loaded into memory, and here's how it worked. And here's where it was talking to the C2, and this is where you could have seen it. You could have seen it at steps 1, 2, 3, or 4. I know you're kidding, Ty. I know you are. All right, so for the technical sophistication, the operational infrastructure relied overwhelmingly on open source penetration testing tools rather than custom malware development. It was running Nmap. Standard security utilities included network scanners, Nmap, database exploitation frameworks, SQL map, password crackers, probably John. They're probably not even running Hashcat, scrubs, and binary analysis suites comprised of technical toolkits, Ghidra MCP. That's probably what they were running. These commodity tools were orchestrated through custom automation frameworks built around the model context protocol servers. Really? Custom automation frameworks? I mean, they probably had a prompt with instructions in it. I'm just saying. And this enabled the framework's agents to execute remote commands, coordinate multiple tools simultaneously, and maintain persistent operational states. The custom development of the threat actors framework focused on integration rather than novel capabilities. Multiple specialized servers provided interfaces between Claude and various tool categories. So we had remote command execution on dedicated penetration testing systems, browser automation for web application reconnaissance, code analysis for security assessments, testing framework integration for systematic vulnerability validation, and callback communications for out-of-bound exploitation confirmation. So they probably had some kind of a C2 server or some listening host set up on the internet. The minimal reliance on proprietary tools or advanced exploit development demonstrates that The minimal reliance on proprietary tools or advanced exploit development. It's a weird phrase. Minimal reliance on proprietary tools. Get that. They're using Nmap and everything else that's in the usual, offensive security specialist toolkit, or advanced exploit development. So they kind of acknowledged that this was doing basic, I hate to say it, but script kiddie level stuff, just at large scale. Like I said, you can scale anything, but scaling something that's crap is just a lot more crap. Anyway, they said this demonstrates that cyber capabilities increasingly derive from orchestration of commodity resources rather than technical innovation. The accessibility suggests potential for rapid proliferation across the threat landscape as AI platforms become more capable of autonomous operations. Yeah, what? No Metasploit? Come on, man. Our response. Upon discovering this attack, we banned the relevant accounts and implemented multiple defensive enhancements in response to this campaign. Expected. Yeah, good. This investigation prompted a significant response from Anthropic. We expanded detection capabilities to further account for novel threat patterns, including by improving our cyber-focused classifiers. So we're prototyping proactive early detection systems for autonomous cyber attacks and developing new techniques for investigating and mitigating large-scale distributed cyber operations. Well, you got your work cut out for you, man. You got your work cut out for you. So we notified relevant authorities and industry partners and shared information with impacted entities where appropriate. This attack pattern has been incorporated into our broader safety and security controls, informing both technical defense systems and cyber harm policy frameworks. I mean, that's good. This is what you'd expect anytime you had a system that was being weaponized in a different way, right? You can almost think of this as, hey, they had a vulnerability in their system and it had to do with the typical vulnerabilities you see around large language models, which is the guardrails and just really how easy they are to find a way to bypass. It really is kind of trivially easy. Cybersecurity implications. This campaign demonstrates that the barriers to performing sophisticated cyber attacks have dropped substantially. Really? Because you literally said they didn't really have much success. And we predict that they'll continue to do so. Threat actors can now use agentic AI systems to do the work of entire teams of experienced hackers. No. With the right setup, analyzing target systems, producing exploit code, and scanning vast datasets of stolen information more efficiently than any human operator, while, at the same time, hallucinating findings. Yeah, so you're getting extra findings, right? A human's only going to find the real findings. With this, you're getting the real and the imaginary ones. You know, hey, imaginary numbers are still numbers. Less experienced and less resource groups can now potentially perform large-scale attacks of this nature. This attack is an escalation even on the vibe hacking finding we reported this summer. In those operations, humans were still very much in the loop, directing the operations. Here, human involvement was much less frequent, despite the larger scale of the attack. And while our visibility is limited to Claude usage, this case study likely reflects consistent patterns of behavior across frontier AI models and demonstrates how threat actors are adapting their operations to exploit today's most advanced AI capabilities. Probably was Gemini attacking Claude. That would be wild, wouldn't it? What if this was like another threat actor like doing a double fake, right? Where they were using something like Gemini to then interact with Claude. And so Gemini was really running Claude code, which was really using Claude to actually go through and do the attack phase. But all in all, it was really just, it had the illusion of an attacker doing it, but it was the attacker telling Gemini to do it. Like this kind of wild double fake. That would be kind of funny. Impractical, but funny to think about. So this raises an important question. If an AI model can be misused for cyber attacks at this scale, why continue to I can't read. Hang on one sec, guys. I gotta get some water. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, you weirdos, and no, I wasn't pooping. All right. Let me see. Disconnected. Hang on. You're killing me, Smalls. Hang on. Let me see if I can get this back up. I don't think this is gonna work though. Nope. Damn it. All right, hang on. Stand by. Let me fix the streamer set. I'm gonna change the be right back screen so it won't do this anymore. But what happens is whenever I switch to the be right back screen, it loses the connection and then it never recovers for some reason. All right, there we go. Now we got it. Boop. Okay. Longer than usual. That must have been a South Park sized poop. I did not go pull a Randy. I literally was just getting my water. Longer than usual. Longer than usual. That's what she said. All right. So let's continue reading on this. So this raises an important question. If AI models can be misused for cyber attacks at this scale, why continue to develop and release them? I have so much to say about that, but it's all really, really rude. So I'm gonna nix it.
Incoming transmission from Morano Gumby lies you was pooping and you know it he.
Was you pushing a Randy or pulling a Randy? I guess technically just depends on how you look at it. But yeah, so this question here, why continue to develop and release them? It's because we never read Orwell properly. That's why. We never read Orwell. Actually, I take it back. They read Orwell as an instruction manual and not as a warning that it should have been. Anyway, the answer is that the variabilities that allow Claude to be used in these attacks also makes it crucial for cyber defense. That's true, but that's like saying, hey, by the way, we created the poison, now we're going to create the cure. So when sophisticated cyber attacks inevitably occur, jeez, I can't talk tonight. When they inevitably occur, our goal is for Claude, into which we've built strong safeguards to assist cybersecurity professionals to detect, disrupt, and prepare for future versions of the attack. Okay, that's really cool that, hey, we're going to build in the defense side to it now that we know Claude can be operationally offensive. We want to make it defensively operational. Yeah, but at the same time, the stuff they're running here, they fully admit was not novel. This is stuff that could have been found or handled by basic cybersecurity controls, right? There was no novel attack here. It's not like this thing came out, and at least they didn't provide any details about the one SSRF that it did find to get through and do this. But there was nothing in here that said, hey, by the way, the AI completely developed a new exploit that bypassed every single known security measure and did this, right? I'm being hyperbolic, but at the same time, I'm being serious. Where the basics, the cybersecurity basics of, hey, by the way, limit your attack surface, test your gear, patch it, make sure you've got everything up and above board, you have an asset inventory. All those basic steps would have prevented this. And it looks like for the large part, it did. They even fully admit that it was a rare instance where it did work. And even then, what always happens with these guys? It's always a freaking OPSEC failure. Their OPSEC failure was they were running all this crap through Claude directly through Anthropic instead of something like Bedrock. Or heck, if they're well-funded, just go grab yourself a bunch of GPUs that NVIDIA is not supposed to be really shipping to China, but everybody kind of knows that they are, and just go build a server to go run a language model locally and do this. Indeed, our threat intelligence team used Claude extensively in analyzing the enormous amounts of data generated during this very investigation. By having these capabilities available isn't enough on its own. The cybersecurity community needs to assume fundamental change has occurred. I'm not assuming anything, bro. Security teams should experiment with applying AI for defense in areas like SOC automation. They're way ahead of you, man. Threat detection. They're way ahead of you, dude. Vulnerability assessments. That's questionable because it's hard enough to make a legit vulnerability scanner with deterministic code, let alone non-deterministic. And incident response and build experience with what works in very specific environments. Dude, freaking Falcon is already doing this. I almost called it CloudStrike. CrowdStrike is already doing this stuff. They've got some machine learning systems already built into it. I'm pretty sure Sentinel-1 does too. But CrowdStrike's the one I've been running up against recently, so I know for a fact that their machine learning system has anomaly detections like this. And the machine learning side is probably a lot more efficient than the large language model learning side. We need continued investment. Whoop, there it is. In safeguards across all AI platforms to prevent adversarial misuse. The techniques we're describing today will proliferate across the threat landscape, which makes industry, threat sharing, improved detection methods, and stronger safety controls all the more critical. I do think that's pretty funny because threat sharing, I thought, was an interesting thing to put in here because this is the end of it. And they gave no TTPs, no IOCs, no information about the attribution. I was like, this is a weak report that honestly feels more like a, hey, by the way, Claude did something really cool, but it was bad, but it was really cool. That's honestly how this reads. They're just marketing to Congress, right? It's like, we need continued investment. I was like, don't even get me started on the AI slosh fund circular money pit, which everybody knows about. It's one of the worst kept secrets on the entire planet. Our Chinese overlords would never lie about GPUs. I know, right? No kidding. So yeah, the world is not ending. This was amateur hour. God forbid somebody actually did this correctly, though, because then it would be really interesting to see. Like I said, if actually someone was doing this on AWS in Bedrock, where in theory there's not any visibility from Amazon into that, that would be crazy because only one or two things are going to happen. One, they're going to fly completely under the radar. Or two, they're going to come in and say, by the way, yeah, we actually do have visibility in this. We see all your data that's going to these large language models. And then what's going to happen? A mass flood of anybody who was using Bedrock to run these newer models is going to say, well, we're done because we were using it for the sole explicit purpose that we needed to control who had observation to our data. And now we've just been told that that is outside of our control. Done. Peace out. Boom. It would be good to know that for sure. Yeah, right. My expectations for this report were low, and they were still not met. I'm just gonna say. This was a really cool article. It's just it's too long to go through on the stream here. So I may try to actually read through it and distill it into an actual standalone YouTube video. Most of the time for the YouTube videos I drop, I'm taking something and abstracting it from the live stream, which I actually really hate. I feel like it's cheap. I feel like it's cheating. And I know everybody says, hey, this is what you should be doing and you should be doing it like this, double up on your live stream. I think it's kind of lame to do that. And the reason for that is because I feel like if you're cutting a YouTube video, it should be dedicated for YouTube, and the YouTube videos themselves and the live stream should interact but still be separate entities, right? There should still be some separation between the two. It's a very different experience and it caters to a very different type of viewer. Hey Ken, what's up, man? Are guardrails still in effect in your if you self-host a model? Kind of, but not so much because they're baked into the model weights themselves, which is what we were talking about with this tool, Ken, at the very beginning of the stream. Hang on one sec. Let me find it. Yeah, Heretic. So this was a tool we talked about just before going into this, and Heretic will actually go through and apply something called ablation or obliteration and start stripping out some of those safeguards that it finds in the model as it's working through it. And it's a pretty well documented system. And what's even crazy is once you apply this to a model, the model then is essentially uncensored and degaussed. Almost said degaussed, but taken out. But yeah, here's the link to all the ones that have already been heritarized from up on a hugging face. So, yeah, it's pretty funny. Again, it's the old antivirus cat and mouse game again, right? They try to make it more secure. Other people try to make it less secure. Oh, yeah, Ty. I got you, man. All right, was there anything else I had listed into here? There was an interesting one. I don't really want to go through the whole video here on stream, but this was one. I'll drop you guys a link to this. But there's these massive security cameras that are just popping up all over the place now. And again, they took Orwell as an instruction manual instead of a warning, and they're called flock cameras. These guys actually went through and found a ton of security issues with them and found out basically how to hack them and get all the information off them. So this was a really cool video. I just linked it down there. Definitely recommend checking that out. I'll eventually go through that video, but I mean, that's like their unique information. I don't have anything else I could really add to it, but it seems kind of, I don't know. We'll see, depending on how much of the news we get through, because it's 9:30 right now. We got about an hour and a half left in the stream. Maybe we'll go through it, because I do want to kind of take a look at it. Let's see. So from other news, actually, hold on. Was that the last thing I had in here? Oh, actually, I got one more video I'll share with y'all. One sec. Let me pull this up. So this was at a particular timestamp, but I'll drop it in here. So this was from the Frontiers in AI Cybersecurity Risk and Opportunities. Oh, he's already mapping those out in the area? Yeah, I remember him talking about that, Oni. I mean, there's lots of maps where they're working on doing stuff like that right now. Yeah, the pooper scoopers. That's right. Let's see. What is this? Oh, yeah, actually, so this was pretty cool. So pretty soon in Windows 11, they're going to finally, they've only had this dang thing for like 15 years. When did Microsoft buy sysinternals? So sysinternals was a suite of tools that were really cool, and they provided just a ton of additional administrative functionality to Windows. And it looks like, let's see, July 18, 2006, Microsoft acquired the company and its assets. So they've been sitting on sysinternals for 19 years. And they're just now getting ready to roll Sysmon, which was one of the most interesting kernel level like tracers and monitors. Gives you a ton of telemetry into Windows operations at the kernel level. They're finally getting ready to roll that into Windows 11. Finally. Yeah. We've been using that since before Windows bought them. Yeah. And so I was like, it's wild that it's only taken them 19 years to get back into that. That company, since they bought it, is old enough to go vote and sign up for military service. That's wild. Also, I would like to point out that since the proliferation, I can't talk tonight. The proliferation of all this vibe code BS has been happening. We've had another Cloudflare outage. So now we've had AWS, we've had Cloudflare, we've had Azure, we had another AWS, and I think there may have been another Cloudflare even before this one, right? It's hard to keep track of them now because they're happening so much. It used to be like, oh my gosh, they had an outage. Now it's like, oh look, another outage. It's pretty wild when your outage report contains the phrase, I would like to apologize for the pain we caused the internet today. Cloudflare was pretty embarrassing this time. All right, so let's go take a look at it. Let's go see, because I have not looked at what was the cause of the outage here. But one of the good things that Cloudflare does, I mean, they do a lot well. They do a good job, but it's always fun to rip on them whenever they mess up. You guys rip on me when I mess up. It's just the way the internet goes. Get some thick skin. But One of the things they do really well, though, is they are actually really good at their transparency reports whenever they do have an incident like this. TLDR, file too big? Oh, no. Oh, no. See, only GCP could have an outage and nobody would know. That's the problem with GCP. Oh, let's take a look at this. Yeah, it was funny because actually Sock was trying to do something on this day. Let's see, this was, yesterday. And she's like, hey, is the router broken again? I was like, no, the whole internet's broken. She's like, oh, okay, as long as it's not our stuff. Oh, let's take a look at this. So let's see. Cloudflare's network began experiencing significant failures to deliver on core network traffic. This showed up in internet users trying to access our customer sites and an error page indicating failure of the Cloudflare network. That's rare. You never usually see it on this side. Usually the X is always over here. It's like, hey, your browser's working, Cloudflare's working, the host no worky. I just slept through it. Yeah, no kidding. The issue was not caused directly or indirectly by a cyber attack or malicious activity of any kind. They never are. They're. I'm not saying they were caused by AI assisted coding. All I'm saying is that every time, or for every company that has said, hey, yeah, we had a massive outage and this was really weird, that same company has said, so much of our code is written by AI now. That's all I'm saying. Correlation does not equal causation, but it does present something interesting. Instead, this was triggered by a change in one of our database system's permissions, which caused the database to output multiple entries into a feature file used by our bot management system. The feature file, in turn, doubled in size. The larger than expected feature file was then propagated to all machines that make up the network. Whoop, there it is. The software running on these machines to route traffic across our network reads this feature file to keep our bot management system up to date with ever-changing threats. The software had a limit on the size of the feature file that was below its doubled size. That caused the software to fail. That's such a weird... The software had a limit on the size. I'm curious why. I'm always curious as to the why of things. After we initially wrongly suspected the symptoms we were seeing were caused by a hyperscale DDoS attack, we correctly identified the core issue. We were able to stop the propagation of the larger than expected feature file and replace it with an earlier version. Core traffic was largely flowing as normal by 1430. And so when did this start? This started, they said it started at 11:20 UTC. So they had it up and running in 3 hours and 20 minutes. That's a big outage though for Cloudflare, because so much of the internet runs through it. Our decentralized nuclear proof dream network has been subsumed by AWS, Azure, and Cloudflare. We worked over the next few hours to mitigate increased load on various parts of our network as traffic rushed back online. All systems of the Cloudflare were functioning normally by 1706. We're sorry for the impact to our customers and the internet in general. Given Cloudflare's importance to the internet ecosystem, any outage of any of our systems is unacceptable. That there was a period of time where our network was unable to route traffic is deeply painful to every one of our member teams. We know we let you down today. Hold on. So what was the initial cause of this? It said, so the software running on these machines to route traffic across the network reads this feature file to keep our bot management system up to date with changes. Hold on. No, where was the database mentioned here? Okay. So this was triggered by a change in one of our database system's permissions, which caused the database to output multiple entries into a feature file used by the bot management system. So was it not supposed to be multiple entries? The feature file in turn doubled in size. The larger than expected feature file was then propagated, and the software had a cap on the feature file size for some reason. They don't explain it. They caused it to go kaput. The client rep is just a DB that spits out a file. I know, right? The file was too big and broke the internet. It was 7 trillion gigabytes. 7 trillion gigabytes. Let's see. So the chart below shows the activity volume for 500 errors or 5x errors for HTTP status code. Yep. Okay. So we see that. The volume prior to 1120 is the expected baseline of 500 errors. So right about, right in this section, right, pretty low. The spike and subsequent fluctuations show our system failing due to the large and incorrect feature file, which was notable for our systems would then recover for a period. This was unusual behavior for our internal error. The explanation was that the file was being generated every 5 minutes by a query running on a ClickHouse database cluster, which was being gradually updated to improve permission management. So bad data was only generated if the query ran on part of the cluster which had been updated. Oh, okay. So they didn't update everything. They rolled it out, and the ones that got the bad update were generating the bad files. But then it looks like they were replicating those files, or maybe they were replicating the change that was creating the bad feature files. Interesting. Hey, Two Bob, what's up, man? Sounds like a royal head smacking for some poor peon. I know, right? Vibe code. It's vibe code. As a result, every 5 minutes, there was a chance of either a good or a bad set of configuration files being generated and rapidly propagating across the network. Oof. So, okay, so it sounds like what happened is a portion of their cluster got the bad update, was generating the trash files. A portion of their system had not been updated, was generating legit files. And then it just depended on which 5-minute interval you were getting either the bad group of the cluster or the good group of the cluster, and that one was generating the file and propagating it. It's what it sounds like happened. So the fluctuation made it unclear what was happening, and the entire system would recover and then fail again as sometimes good, sometimes bad configuration files were distributed to the network. This led us to believe that it might be caused by an attack. Eventually, every ClickHouse node was generating the bad config file, and the fluctuation stabilized in the failing state. Yep, so they were doing gradual rollouts. They had a partial failure state that was oscillating, and then finally it just went full failure state. Errors continued until the underlying issue was identified and resolved at 1430. We solved the problem by stopping the generation and propagation of the bad feature file and manually inserting a known good file into the feature file distribution queue, and then forcing a restart of the core proxy. The remaining long tail of the chart above The remaining long tail in the chart above is our team restarting remaining services that entered the bad state with 500 codes. Okay. Yeah, because you see it went from nada down here to boom, everything to down. And then finally, we're at full failure state, and then now they're starting to recover. And then you can see it kind of got back to maybe a tiny bit above baseline, starting at 1700, but it's still pretty much recovered by that point. No change management? Damn. Akamai had a lot of fun on LinkedIn. Lots of passive-aggressive post-liking. Dude, LinkedIn is such a dumpster fire. Let's see. Okay, so this is how Cloudflare processes the request and how things went wrong. So every request to Cloudflare. Damn, I can't talk. So every request to Cloudflare takes a well-defined path through our network. It could be from a browser loading a web page. Frozen, you're so full of crap. Basically, whatever. It's loading a web page. The requests are first terminate at our SSL layer and then flow into the core proxy system, which we call frontline, and finally through Pingora, which performs cache lookups and fetches of the data as is needed. Okay, so the client connects in, it goes through here, goes through WAF, rate limiting, bot limiting, through frontline, and then goes to Pingora for caching, and then if it needs to, it goes to the customer's origin. So as a request transits the core proxy, we run the various security performance availabilities in our network. The proxy applies each customer's unique configuration settings, from enforcing WAF rules and DDoS protections and other things like that. It accomplishes this through a set of domain-specific modules that apply the configuration and policy rules to traffic transiting the proxy. One of these modules, the bot management, was the source of today's outage. Bot management includes, among other things, a machine learning model that is used to generate bot scores for every request traversing our network. Our customers use bot scores to control which bots are allowed to access their site or not, which is actually pretty interesting because this is one of the things that Cloudflare was talking about where they have gotten pretty good. That's my understanding. I don't work on Cloudflare a lot. I don't interact with it very much. But they had started working on systems for detecting AI scraping bots, and people were able to start blocking those on Cloudflare's proxy. So the model takes as input a feature configuration file. A feature file in this context is an individual trait used by the machine learning model to make a prediction about whether the request was automated or not. The feature config file is a collection of individual features. The feature file is refreshed every few minutes and published to our entire network and allows us to react to variations in traffic flow across the internet. So it allows us to react to new types of bots and new bot attacks. So it's critical that it's rolled out frequently and rapidly as bad actors change their tactics quickly. Makes sense. So a change in our underlying ClickHouse query behavior that generates the file caused it to have a large number of duplicate feature rows. This changed the size of the previously fixed size feature configuration file, causing the bot module to trigger the error. Got it. Let's see. So unrelated to this incident, we are currently migrating our customer traffic to a new version of our proxy service, internally known as Frontline 2. Both versions were affected by this issue, although because the impact observed was different. Customers deployed on FL2 proxy engine observed 500 errors or 5x errors. Customers on our old proxy engine did not see errors, but bot scores were not generated correctly, resulting in all traffic receiving a bot score of 0. So it failed open is what the difference was. Customers that had rules deployed to block bots would have seen a large number of false positives. Customers who were not using bot score rules did not see any impact. Ooh, interesting. Hey, Nesta, what's up, man? Happy Wednesday. I gotta call it a night because I'm going home sweaty. Dude, I know, right? Dude, thank you for watching from the gym, though. That's hardcore. Take care, Oni. Have a good night, brother. So our lives are at the mercy of a thin, twisted pair or a misconfigured DNS file. Kind of. I mean, this wasn't a DNS file, but yeah, I get what you're saying. That was, I believe that's what caused the Azure outage a couple weeks ago, was a bad, I think it was an IPv6 DNS update. I think that was what caused it. Told y'all, IPv6, no good. It's no bueno. So in the internal incident chat, we were concerned that this might actually be a continuation of a DDoS attack. All right. So it's helpful to know that how ClickHouse distributes queries, or how its distributed queries work. So a ClickHouse cluster consists of many shards. To query the data from the shards, we have so-called distributed tables powered by a table engine called distributed and a database called default. The distributed engine queries the underlying tables in the ClickHouse database. Yeah. Underlying tables were then data stored in each shard is stored on each shard in the ClickHouse cluster. Queries to the data, distributed table run through the shard system account, and as part of the effort to improve our distribution queries security and reliability, there's work being done to make sure they run under the initial user account instead. Okay, so they're actually trying to properly limit it with least privileges. I mean, that's a good update to do. Let's see. So before today, ClickHouse users would only see the tables in the default database when querying table from the metadata ClickHouse, such as system tables or columns. Since users already had implicit access to the underlying tables,
see what's up.
That's right, we're going to echo 23. Since users already had implicit access to the underlying tables in database R0, we made a change at 11:05 to make the access explicit so that the users can see the metadata in the tables as well. By making sure all the distributed subqueries can run under the initial user, query limits and access grants can be evaluated in a more fine-grained manner, avoiding one bad subquery from a user affecting others. Okay. I'm just saying the whole thing is a rat. Rat's this points to a failure. Right. All right, so let's see what they did. So there was an assumption made in the past that the list of columns returned by a query like this would only include the default database. So they select the name and type from columns where the table is requests and order by the name. The query doesn't filter for the database name, with us gradually rolling out the explicit grants to users of a given ClickHouse cluster. After the change, the query above started returning duplicates of columns because those were for underlying tables stored in the R0 database. Unfortunately, this unfortunately was the type of query that was performed by the bot management feature file generation logic to construct each input feature for the file mentioned at the beginning of the section. Okay, so what they got was they got feature 1, feature 1, feature 2, feature 2. And this was the column feature 1 of the table HTTP request in default and R0. So rather than querying just the what was it? What did they say? The default? Yeah, rather than just querying the default database, they were also querying the R0 database. That's why everything doubled in here. Got it. Still interesting that the file was limited in size, though. So as part of the additional permissions that were granted the user, the response now contained all the metadata for the R0 schema, effectively more than doubling the rows consistently. Yeah. Oh, they'd use memory pre-allocation. That's why it had a fixed size. So each module running on the proxy service has a limited number of space. It limits this. Has a number of limits in place to avoid unbound memory consumption and pre-allocated memory as performance optimizations. In this specific instance, bot management system has a limit on the number of machine learning features that can be used at runtime. Currently, the limit set to 200, well above our current use, which is around 60 features. Again, the limit exists because for performance reasons for pre-allocating memory. So when a bad file has more than 200 features, that had more than 200 features was propagated to our servers, that limit was hit, resulting in the system panicking. It's a panic in the disco. The FL2 Rust code. Oh, there we go. Rust. Eat it, Rustations. The FL2 Rust code that makes the check that was the source of the unhandled error is shown below. Rust will fix everything. Except iron. Won't fix iron. This resulted in a panic and started throwing the 5x errors. Nice. Just SQL map it. That's right, Gumby. Just throw a little SQL map on it. Oh, that's hilarious. Other systems that rely on the core proxy were impacted during the incident. This included worker KVs and Cloudflare access. The team was able to reduce the impact to these systems a little bit later when the patch was made to the worker KV to bypass the core proxy. Subsequently, all downstream systems that relied on worker KVs, such as access, observed reduced error rates. The Cloudflare dashboard was also impacted due to both workers KV being used internally and the Cloudflare turnstile being deployed as part of our login system. Okay, I get eating your own dog food, but at the same time, there's sometimes you just want to have your admin out of band, man. That's funny. Turnstile was impacted by this outage, resulting in customers who did not have an active dashboard session being unable to log in. RIP. All right, so they went through their remediation. They figured out where the issue was. That's funny. Hardening ingestion of the Cloudflare generalized config files in the same way we use for user-generated input. Enabling more global kill switches for the feature. That's too funny. Today was Cloudflare's worst outage since 2019. We've had outages that made our dashboard unavailable, some of which caused newer features to be unavailable for a period of time, but in the last 6+ years, we've not had another outage that has caused the majority of core traffic to stop flowing through our network. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So this whole incident started off at 11:28 UTC, and then they had main resolve at 14:30, right? So roughly 2 hours. Hold on, 3 hours. Not terrible, but that's a lot of time to be happening things. And then they had a full restoration at 17:06, so roughly 4.5 hours later. Rust took down the internet. Fact. That's right. TLDR, Rust took down the internet. Panic. Panic in the Rust. Oh, that's too funny. Let's see. And then now, what's so funny is, here's this, and then the next thing. Rust and Android. Move fast and fix things. Maybe this should have been move fast and break things. Oh. Yeah, Ty, I knew that was coming too. I was like, oh my god, Source, Rust is amazing! And then they have stuff like this happen. That's funny. Although, to be perfectly fair, it was a problem in the Rust code that caused it to panic out. But reality, it was a change in how they did the permissioning and not understanding how that was going to affect the database table reads. And then instead of reading from one database, they were reading from two. And so it doubled the size of it and crashed it. But still, I'm never going to miss a good chance to riff on Rust.
15 megabytes to store 4 minutes of audio. But if we delete everything that the...
Let's see. Oh, we already talked about this. Google's going to let power users bypass the sideloading restrictions. Oh, what is this? Another Fortinet firewall exploit. Path traversal and an authentication bypass in a security appliance? Standard fare. Pretty much. This was actually really neat. So speaking of Rust tools, and I actually like UV Ultraviolet as a package manager for Python tools. I really like it. However, there was an issue with Astral Tokyo tar that it basically was created. It was used for handling tar files, and it was more or less become unmaintained. And that was used in Ultraviolet, and it caused a security issue, basically through creative symlink usage. Let's take a look at this real quick. Let me see if it's not too long. There you go. So Astral Tokyo tar, a Rust crate used by the popular tool UV, had a vulnerability that allowed arbitrary file writes when unpacking tar files. So in UV, this vulnerability allows a Python source distribution to write anywhere during execution. So this vulnerability is primarily due to Astral Tokyo tar's support of symlinks and the memorized set behavior that skips path validation on previously observed and validated paths. So since the symlink can point to a directory and can change by having multiple entries in the tar file, it's possible to create symlinks to a benign directory under the destination path, have it validated, add to the memorized set, and then change the symlink to another arbitrary directory anywhere on disk. That's funny. Additionally, a symlink that points to an arbitrary directory and bypasses any validation can be created by using two symlinks, where the first symlink created depends on the second symlink to bypass validation. RIP. So this vulnerability allows an attacker to generate a tar file that can create or change arbitrary files on the file system. That's funny. I read a little bit about this, but I thought it was pretty hilarious. But the whole thing came about is because Astral Tokyo tar was not being actively maintained. It was created. I think there was, if I remember correctly, there was a different Rust crate that UV was using to handle tar files, and it wasn't working. It didn't have the proper set of features or something. And then they switched to Astral Tokyo tar, and then Astral Tokyo tar kind of became abandonware. I don't think it's been updated in a while. Let's see. Actually, it did receive an update last month. Let's look at the releases here. So here, it did actually have one here, but then are there any other releases in here? Let's see. It actually, I take it back. Maybe Astral Tokyo tar was being updated. That was what I had heard, but I take it back. This one actually looks like it is being actively maintained. Let's see. What's the commit history look like? Let's see. Commits on October 21st, September 23rd, August, March. So yeah, it's still being actively maintained. Let's see. Yeah, so it looks like once it validated something, it memorized that, did not revalidate it, and then just went on its merry way. That's funny. And this was one of those bugs that was being used to show Rust people. It's like, hey, it's not all about memory safety. You actually do have to have proper logic checks in your program. There is more than just memory bugs. What is this? Drawbot. Let's hack something cute. I'm always up for that. A few months ago, I realized I was overdue for some fun, quirky hardware projects. Every so often, I like to see what's interesting in the electronic children's toys. So when looking, keep in mind the potential attack surface typically preferring toys with a companion mobile app, wireless communications, or any kind of added complexity. So I came across these robots that draw from a set of predefined images. They all come with a pack of 100 to 150 cards, and the drawings appear very similar across brands. So the attack surface seemed especially small given that it used predefined physical cards. So I wouldn't be able to snoop an FCC ID for this one or peek into its sweet innards. Let's see, regardless, it seems like an interesting target and I couldn't resist. I've never seen these. Why not just, teach your kid to draw? Agent Zero is practicing drawing right now. He's actually getting really good at it. There's not enough time in the day to keep up with everything. Oh yeah, no kidding, right? Can I have some of your time? No, I don't have any. I have 0 time. Let's see. So he picked up one of these teardown. Let's see. So on the bottom, we have a few ultra recessed screw holes. You'd like to think at the point that probably equipped to deal with these, but I'm not. Without fail, every hardware assessment helps me realize what I still don't have besides patience. So no matter how many specialized tools or components I amass in my home lab, there's always something that I end up having to buy. So at this point, I could have easily purchased what I needed for same or next day delivery, but that would have required patience. I could have probably 3D printed something to do the job again, but I'm not that patient. So what I lacked in patience, I made up for in power. I made up for in power tools. I ended up using a combination of drilling the hole slightly bigger for to clear some of the screw bits, and then chaining bits together. Oh, that's funny. Chaining the bits together. So with the recessed screws removed, the top half popped off, and I saw it without much additional trouble. There's our little board right there. Fairly standard, fairly basic. Couple of controllers, some power right there. It's a motorized spirograph. I know, right? Dude, the spirographs are so cool. Let's see. So with the barcode reader exposed, I tried some very basic preliminary fuzzing by taking a valid card and shifting it around to provide unexpected input. So when a card is placed over the sensor, the device makes a sound and then announces the associated image. Okay, so that's how they're using the barcode. Got it. So it's just basic bit mapping on here. These are always so fun. I love messing with these. So while fuzzing, various images were announced, all of which seemed to match up with other cards I had seen on the deck until the robot announced, "Take a bath." And that seemed odd and mildly offensive, so I rummaged through the deck and I could find, not for the life of me, any cards with bath imagery. So with the card held in place, I pushed the button to initiate drawing. The robot started singing, and surely enough, it drew a kid in a bathtub. Creepy. So now that I had a decent idea of what I was working with, I set the following goals. So enumerate and identify all available drawings. The cards clearly don't tell the whole story here. And the classic goal at Atreides is put a bird on it. Figure out how these drawings are represented and stored, and use the information to add our own. Put a bird on it. Love it. So it basically works on identifying the components of what he could gather and dump, and there were a couple of juicy ones labeled here. So we've got a couple of circuits that are labeled. So we got an ARM Cortex board, a 64-bit flash, and 128 megabit flash. So I was able to dump the 64 meg flash via an SPI interface. I had no luck with the 128 meg flash, and also had no luck connecting to the MCU via SWD. I don't know what SWD is. So for the barcode analysis, I used a multimeter and the printed trace lines. Oh, excuse me. So we bought an original spirograph last month. Me. Can I make you a digital one? Wife, you are so broken. I loved spirographs. They were so great. By the way, anybody, I know some of y'all are very young in here, but I probably spelled this wrong. Yeah, here we go. So this is what the spirograph is right here. And basically it's a geared drawing system. So you got these holes, you would place your pencil in there. You would place these gear teeth against this one, and then it would just go around and it would make these like really intricate designs in here. And so you had some that you could trace in here, like if you could trace the side of it, but this was the big draw right here, right? It would make these cool spiral graphs, hence the name. So then you could even overlay them a couple more. So you could do like one loop of one size and then a different loop on another side to make these really intricate patterns. They're so much fun as a kid. Like this one right here. See how these got two that are overlaid? So good.
Incoming transmission from RNO Gumby Serial Wire Debug, SWD.
Oh, is that what it is? I never heard of that. Interesting. I'm not very up on hardware at all, especially not like hardware reverse engineering or testing. I got another buddy who's really good at that. I like his annotations here though, by tracing the wire leads and seeing where everything goes. This is cool. Let's see. So using a multimeter and the printed trace lines, we can map the connections for the optical sensor that read the barcode to determine which card is inserted. So I was initially stumped by the fact that there was some overlap between the sensors and the pins. So I came up with the concept of input multiplexing. Essentially, the board will power sensors 1 through 5 using VCC1 and then read the values on the input pins. Then it powers the sensors on 6 through 8 using VCC2 and reuse the same input pins to read those values. Oh, okay. So it reads half and then it reads the other half. Got it. Interesting. I got into some experience back in the day, but that was many dead memory cells ago. I understand, man. So to test this theory, I decided to hook up a logic analyzer to the various inputs. To keep myself sane, I replaced the original all red wire connectors with 2 sets of color-coded custom ones broken out to a breadboard and with 2 rows of the head between them. So this setup would facilitate both passive analysis and active signal manipulation simultaneously. Cool. He man in the middle did. Look at that. It's very cool. So sure enough, the VCC lines alternated at a regular cadence, lending massive credibility to the multiplexing theory. Okay, yeah, because you see VCC1 is not active when VCC2 is. Looks like there's a skip, and then they alternate, and then a skip, and then they alternate again. Very cool. So with everything connected to the Celia, is that this guy? Yeah, this guy right here. This one. Boop. So I can now observe the behavior when the card was scanned. So I chose the card corresponding to the barcode value of all zeros, just basically number 1. Hopefully make the data more obvious to recognize. Let's see. So with the card... Oh, the crab card. With the crab card in place, I would expect the rightmost sensor to register a high value, while the others registered a low value. Well, as you can see below, the orientation of the barcode is swapped on the backside. So in reality, the leftmost sensor is registered as the high value. Wish I could say I noticed this right away. I really wish I could say that. That's funny. Square waves. Square. That's funny. So he's looking at the card, right? But the card gets reversed when it's up against the scanner. So in here, it's on the right side. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So it looks like this on the front, but it's mirrored on the back, is what he's saying. So once I figured out the data matched up with our expectations, so during the VCC1 phase, sensors 1 through 5 are powered, the pins are red. Sensor 1, which is the leftmost, is our sole high read in this case, and sensors 2 through 5 are low. VCC2 phase for sensors 6 through 8 powered the pins and are red more, are once more red. So that corresponds to the values of the final 3 bits in the barcode, giving us all zeros into 1. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it's one byte of data here. So I had the VCC triggers shown in the reverse order below to make the barcode value more clear. Just like that. So in hardware analysis, these are the moments I live for. The way I outline it here, it seems so straightforward and obvious if I did my job correctly, but for me, the path was sprinkled with failures and confusions, wiring mistakes, and several consultations with my coworker, Chad GPT. Anyway, let's test out this one more complex barcode. The hot dog card has a barcode value of 010001111. Right here. So 01000, and this would be all ones right there. Okay. Zero. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see if I'm reading this correctly. So up here, this was 100000. If I understand it correctly. No, actually, I take it back. It reads in reverse order, he said, right? So this should go 000001, like this, if I'm understanding this correctly. But then we have 4 and 5 just kind of hanging out here. So it goes... Okay, hold on. So here's the VCC1 phase, right? So here's when these get read. 00. And then this is 00. But then when VCC2 hits, then it goes here. So it goes like this. Comes up this line, and then up this one here. But then this one read as a 1? Am I reading this backwards? I think so. Anyway, hang on one sec, guys. I'll be right back. Hold on. I'm just going to turn on OPSEC mode for a second so it doesn't break the stream. But hang on. I'll be right back. Yes, I'm very confused, Gumby.
Incoming transmission from Morano Gumby. Are you confused yet?
All right, I'm back. Ah! Drop my head. Drop my ears. Hang on. If chat was to be believed, and I just want you all to know that everybody in chat is a dirty, dirty liar, I poop approximately 75 times a day. All right, I'm back. So hold on, what did he say here? He said VCC 1 reads sensors 1 through 5, right? Oh, this is sensor 1 and 6. This is 2 and 7. This is 3 and 8. And then 4 and 5 are standalone in here. Hold on, where was the picture of the sensor? So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If they were multiplexing it, I guess I would have assumed that they were going to read 4 and 4. At least from this, maybe this is just how he's got it laid out in here. Look at this. So during the VCC 1 phase, he said it reads sensors 1 and 5, right? So this is 1. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8 during VCC 2. That's so weird. Why is it split? That's so weird that it does 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8. It does 5 and 3. That's just odd. I guess when I was reading through this, I assumed in my head that it was split 4 and 4, but no, it's split 5 and 3. That's so weird. Okay. Oh.
Incoming transmission from Morano Gumby. VCC 1 does odds and VCC 2 does evens.
Is that it? I don't think that's it, Gumby, because look right here. This would be the VCC 1 phase, right? And here we've got 4 and 5. So we've got an odd and an even. So if that was the case, I would have expected, 1, 3, 5, and 7 to be on VCC 1, and then 2, 4, 6, and 8 to be on VCC 2. But no, it's not split like that. That would have made more sense. This is a weird split where it's 5 and then 3. Very weird. Anyway. All right, so now he's pulling up the hot dog test. So now that we understand how the barcodes are translated into signals, we can emulate them using programmable format of input. So I opted to use the Raspberry Pi as we can operate at 3.3 volts and seemingly perfect for this use case. Makes sense because it's running an ARM system too, so it's probably similar voltages if I had to make a swag. So we need to map each of the relevant pins to the sensor board and the GPIO for the Pi. So I'm using red to represent the VCC lines, but as you can also see, they're currently mapped to GPIO pins. Since we don't actually need to power a board, we're using these lines as input so we can track the power cycles.
Incoming transmission from Mariano Gumbio and work at VCC1 is 1 to 5 and VCC2 is 6 to 8.
Yes. And that's what caught me off guard. I was like, why is it not evenly split? That is so weird. Anyway, cool. I like how he's broken this out with the Raspberry Pi. Very cool. Wired up. I like how he had the individual wires too. So I think he said he had GPIO. I'm guessing he's got GPIO 5 and 23 reading the different VCCs. And then I don't know. I'm way out of my depth here on the hardware. This is why I'm reading on it, actually, because I'd like to learn more. Would you like to know more? Yes. Yes, I would. So 1 and 6 come here. Or this one is what handles 1 and 6, and then 2 and 7, 3 and 8, and then 4 and 5 are just kind of their own deal here. What a weird... Okay. Okay, I guess it makes sense about this, because they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins to work with.
Incoming transmission from Mariano Gumby that make fuck all of sense. Why is VCC2 3 chips would make more sense to have it slipped 4 and 4.
I see why they did it though, Gumby, because look right here. Here's the pin layout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why they did that. Because they're just reusing... That's why they're paired up the way they are. I got it. I got it. It's dumb, but I get why it is. I would not have done it this way. I would have said, okay, this wire is just kaput, and for simplicity, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what I would have done. But again, I also don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a hardware person. I just think it would have made more sense. So basically, with everything wired up, the next step was to script a logic loop at the decimal values of 1 to 256, convert to binary, chunk that binary into 2 groups, and write the appropriate values to the GPIO pins based on which phase the VCC multiplexing cycle we were in. Okay. So he converts it to binary, chunks it, and then when it reads VCC1, it sends one chunk. When it reads VCC2, it sends another chunk. Get it. Got it. So it took a ton of trial and error, tweaking, logic analysis, wire rechecks, and cursing to get this thing to this point. Let me see what he's got here. Hold on. Let's see. Let's see. Do I have it transmitting? I don't know if I have the sound going from the desktop to here. Hang on. Well, it doesn't matter. He doesn't have any sound going anyway. But here it is going through and running through all the various iterations here. Oh no, it does actually have sound. Hang on. So it did actually, so as it ran through and it hit individual ones, it actually did trigger the speaker. So I guess that's how he was doing that. Let's see. So while looping through every possible image, I painstakingly wrote down what I heard. And so in some cases, I really could not decipher the audio. So in those cases, I would need to have the robot actually draw the image and hope it made sense. So with this lookup file, I modified the script to also print out the text along with the numeric value. Now I could pinpoint the oddballs and draw them, like the example below where I heard chain block. Chain block? Yeah, seems plausible. Interesting. So with this approach, I filled some of the gaps and identified some of the hidden images that weren't represented in the actual cards. A drone, a threatening panda wolf thingy, a soldier, and Chinese? I think that's Chinese? So the full set of available images can be seen below. The stack of cards provided with the robot included images 1 through 100. Everything beyond that was a mysterious hidden bonus. We had policeman, we had private, fireman, farmer, worker, nurse, painter, musician, dancer, Snow White. How much you want to bet they were going to have these like on standby? And so 100 was a teapot, and then they had alphabetical characters. They were going to have this as like a DLC. Not quite a DLC. I guess it would be like a bonus pack. Like, oh, look, here's some new cards that you can buy. So to be able to draw our own images, we needed to understand how images were represented, where they're stored, and whether they had the ability to overwrite those values.
Incoming transmission from Mariano Gumby. The rest of that article makes sense. It says that word on the card that is correlates with a memory buffer.
It correlates with the memory. Oh, nice. So a typical directory entry layout looked a bit like the following. Oh, let me see if I zoom out on this, will it render? Ah, there we go. Let me zoom out a little bit and it renders properly. So we've got a checksum, start offset, the size, whatever flags are, and then the name, which is 16 bytes null terminated. So for example, the directory entry at 01 has the following content breakdown, which is our checksum, our offset, and then the name. Oh, which I guess was just the file name in here. Got it. So noting this, we can semi-shamefully vibe code a high-level analyzer. Wait, hold on. There we go. To identify the SPI flash read operations, take the associated read images from the fast read, perform a lookup against the directory entry layout, and print the associated file name to show what's being read at that moment. So with the high-level analyzer in place, I had the bot read and draw image number 105. Sure enough, it read the file Y105F1A. However, it read several other files during the course of drawing, including whatever these other files are. And so when I scanned other cards, the associated F1A file was read, even if I never drew an image. So the pattern for these other reads seemed to line up with whatever the robot would talk or sing. This led me to believe that it was actually looking up the audio files and not the drawings. Well, that makes sense. So it was time to go after the second SPI flash chip again. Unfortunately, I learned from my trusted colleague Chris Bellows that when in doubt, go for the chip off extract, which is successful and a good time was had by all. So he removed the flash chip, installed it into a breakout board, wired it up to a bus pirate. Nice. My one buddy that I know who does a lot with hardware, he freaking loves his bus pirate. So with this SPI chip removed from the board, the drawbot still functioned. It would power on, read, and announce cards and play music. The one thing it did not do was actually move its arms and draw the images, which seemed like pretty intense proof that this chip contains the drawing files and the smaller flash chips contained the audio. So this must have been that 128 meg one he said he couldn't read before. So the contents of the extracted image looked very structured, which bonded well with being some sort of coordinated based data that was likely to be expected for a drawing. So I guess drawing instructions? Because it's the year 2025 and LLMs are coming for our jobs anyway, I thought I'd give ChatGPT a chance to make short work of the analysis. So I fed it the dump, said I suspect it contained image instruction files, and sent it on its way. So it thought for 41 seconds and came back with this. That's pretty cool. I'm here. Nice dump. That's what she said. It's probably what everybody in chat would say every time they fire the poop command.
Incoming transmission from Mariano Gumby. I always wonder how my son's VTech robot worked. He.
Dude, I loved the VTech. Dude, VTech's an old company because the very first like toy laptop I had was a VTech, and it ran BASIC. I could actually code BASIC on that thing. Like 10, print what is your name, and 20, take input, and 30, say, hey man, how you doing, so and so, and then go to 10, and like that kind of BASIC, right? Oh, I love that little laptop. The screen was so small; it was like the size of a Post-it note on there. It was itty bitty. Yeah, dude, I love that thing. So putting aside the excessive flattery and overly semi-off-putting vibe of ChatGPT, we got it. Only problem is there appears to be only 35 images within the file. The first 35 images to be exact. So since this is an atypical chip, it's possible the flash ROM is making incorrect assumptions. So we know from the spec that we should have 16 megs of data. So we can force it to read 16 megs by specifying a target chip similar enough to ours. So I've done several extractions of WinBond flash. So that's what I went with, and the new dump contained 254 images. Okay, looks a bit more exact because judging from his table he had up here, right? We've got 8 bits. We have 8 bits to work with. We got 1 byte, so we should have 256 combinations in here. Boom. It's funny you said 256 right here. That should be just like quad 0 or all zeros. But anyway, so what does he do after this? Cool, so since we now know the structure, we can script up a parser and generator in Python that will carve out the data for each image, process the coordinates, and feed them into an SVG path element to create an image file. That's a good idea. Why not? I mean, it'd be perfect for an SVG. VTEX are powered by black and white LCDs and 1-cent jelly bean chips. Sad face, dude. That's pretty much what they were powered by back in the day. Now, granted, at the same time, that's what all the Texas Instrument calculators are pretty much powered by. I don't know if they're like alligators, right? They just don't get much of an update. The TI-85 is still the TI-85. Cool, so we went from this raw thing to a nice little SVG showing our bird. Oh, this was the bird he's gonna put on it. Nice. Love it. So we just need to parse through the path data and transform it into the data that the drawbot expects. Since the flash memory is just one big blob and we're hoping to only overwrite one image, i.e. the other drawings still work, we need to make sure our padding is correct and then we expect the following. We follow the expected format, including any necessary delimiters. So as we can see from the crowd drawing ChatGPT spit out, it didn't quite seem to process the pin up action properly. So every movement drew a line. Luckily for me, my drawing is a single continuous line, so I don't have to worry about that. Cheater. That's all right. You're not cheating, you're not trying. Cool, so then he goes and he overwrites the memory on the chip. I should have confirmed that we could write the flash chip before even going down this path. Fortunately, we could. Yay! And the peasants rejoiced. So it's at this point I remembered that the chip wasn't actually installed on the drawbot anymore, since nothing ever works after the first try. This was very likely a problem. So I already had it installed on this nice breakout board with headers. So I soldered wires on the board itself, globbed on hot glue to try and keep them from ripping off the board, and hooked them up to the connector on the other side. This way I could switch back and forth between my programmer and the drawbot until it was right. Let's see. So it took very few iterations where I had to work out some minor kinks, but it actually worked. I couldn't have some gnarled headless robot in my final demo, so I modified the case to accommodate the flash chip hanging out and patched it back in as best I could. That's funny. That's too funny right there. It's like, oh yeah, look, it's totally fine. Pay no attention to the butt of the robot. That's so cool. I love this. Oh, that's too funny. Good job, Jesse. I didn't know clicking on her name would bring this up, but yeah, good job. Jesse Chab? I'm gonna say Chab. Yeah. Good job on this. That was fun. I love good hardware breakdowns. Did I tell you I worked as a TI engineer back in the day to get I worked with the TI engineer back in the day to get his BBS to talk to Commodore systems. The ASCII was different between this. Oh, that's wild. It's like, but ASCII should be ASCII. Math is math. ASCII is ASCII. That's wild that it was different. Oh, too fun. That was actually a fun read because I like a good hardware hack, and that one was actually it was really well written, and so it was easy to kind of follow along with. That was cool. Hack the planet. Wait, who's it? It's J Beers. Oh, J Beers. I love him. Ooh, what is this? macOS infection vector using AppleScript to bypass Gatekeeper. Ooh. I'm getting a lot more clients with Macs running in their environment. And it's funny because the main reason they're running Macs now is because they're completely cloud native. They don't have very much on-prem at all. So they're not running like on-prem Active Directory. So this will give us an overview of SCPT Apple scripts that are used to creatively deliver Mac OS malware, such as fake Office documents or fake Zoom and Zoom or Teams updates. Previously, a technique seen with APT campaigns for Mac OS, and so we could have seen samples coming from the Mac OS Stealer ecosystem like MacSync or Odyssey. Yeah, pretty much one more. After this one, we'll probably go ahead and call it a night for tonight. But this looks pretty good. Actually, let me see. I do like this. I want to take a look at it, but let me see if there's anything else that's super interesting right now. Let's see. Rygen Protector, Intel Arch bin-to-bin PE obfuscation protection and DRM tool. Let me take a quick peek at this real quick. Open source bin-to-bin obfuscation protection and DRM tool for Windows PE binaries targeting x64 architectures. Research grade protector and obfuscator built to explore bin-to-bin transformation techniques. Ooh. Suitable for security researchers, reverse engineers, anti-cheat and anti-tamper developers, and others studying binary protection. Focuses on transforming binaries while preserving the original program semantics. Cool. Features include junk code insertion and mutations. Let's see, IAT call obfuscation, random selection naming, mathematical operator virtualization, mathematical operation virtualization with Hyper-V isolation, kernel user and kernel mode anti-debug, troll reversers, can introduce BSODs during reversing attempts. Oh, this is sick. Oh, that's pretty cool. Hold on. I'm going to send that one up on Discord real fast because this looks awesome. I'm going to put that on the... where did I put that? I'm going to put that in the binary analysis channel. Because I think that's pretty cool. I like this. Hold on. I'm going to star this one also into the malware development list. By the way, guys, if you go on the BlazeBits GitHub and you look at the starred projects and go to lists, that's where all these lists live. And so any interesting repositories I come across that I think are cool, I try to categorize them so it's a nice reference list for everyone. So before, nice and pretty. Afterwards, junk. I just want to see how this works. BSOD during reversing attempts. That's hilarious. All right, I'm not going to spend time on that one, but I'm glad I looked at that real fast. I want to dig into that SAM dump. Let's go take a look at it real quick. It looks like this was using the volume shadow copies, which is a really well-known tactic and gets picked up pretty easily. Usually trying to access VSS, especially for something like the hives for the registry, that's a pretty well-known, like a pretty well-known system to look at. So this extracts the SAM and system files from the volume shadow copy service. Has multiple exfiltration options and XOR obfuscation. Uses NT API calls for the operations. Now, the cool thing is, I was talking with a buddy about this because he's really knowledgeable about the Windows API, is that there's actually so many NT APIs that you can use for doing like create and read files and write files that you don't, if you could find a primitive where you can get the same net effect without using these, is what's really awesome. You have to run this as administrator. Womp womp. I mean, typically you do that anyway, so. If you created the shadow copy, it is automatically deleted after 5 minutes. So here, I'll send a copy of, oh, I clicked the wrong button. Here, I'll send a copy of this for everybody who wants to take a look at it. What is this written in? Written in C++ and a little bit of Python. Oh, the Python is the XOR decoder. Got it. Oh, it's also got some Python for the server to receive the output. I mean, interesting idea, but really, running as an executable makes it a lot more difficult. If you could run this as a beacon object file, it'd be kind of cool. All right, I do want to read on this Mac OS one here real quick. Yeah, no problem, Ty. Let's see. So in August 2024, Apple removed one of the most popular infection vectors in macOS called the right-click and open gatekeeper override. So since then, attackers have had to rely on other ways to get their malware running on macOS. So below is an overview of two alternative malware delivery methods that we've seen. Both methods require the victim to interact with the terminal app, which can make the technique less effective. Okay. Okay, so the other one is kind of like the, what do they call this? Like click once, where it's like, oh yeah, you need to go do this. And the idea here is you send a fake CAPTCHA, and they're like, hey, what you need to do is you got to copy this command here into your terminal and run it. But when they click copy, it actually copies something different. And then when they paste it into the terminal and run it, it actually runs whatever the infection code is. I think they usually call that maybe click once, is that it? The other common method we've seen is the drag and drop terminal, or drag and drop to terminal in here. So you have a shortcut to the terminal, you take whatever the code is, and it drops it and then executes it in the terminal. This one, I think you're gonna have a lot more. I'm sitting here trying to close it. I'm clicking the freaking red dot. This one I think would be a lot more effective from a social engineering perspective. So this involves using an SCPT files. Although the use of SCPT AppleScript files is not new, we've observed more samples using this technique in the last few months. So what caught my interest was a sample analyzed by Moonlock Labs, not familiar with them, where the AppleScript created a fake docx file and a pptx file. Yeah, it potentially either be phishing or some other social engineering campaign, Gumby. That's where this would actually come in like real handy. Like, oh, hey guys, by the way, we've got new security controls. We need you to go update it. Or in this case, I love that they used a WeChat install example in here. Let's see. Oh, look at this. So our assumption regarding the previous DPRK campaign is based on similar attack stages, basically initial phishing targets for cryptocurrency, branch scripts, and early OS reconnaissance, backdoor installation, and data exfil, as well as because the delivery tactic. The initial infection vector is a compiled AppleScript falsely given a docx extension, and which is indeed an AppleScript. So I guess it doesn't really care about the extension. It's probably reading the metadata off the file and doing it. So after looking at other similar samples, we found some instances of this technique being used by commodity malware like Odyssey Stealer and Maxing Stealer. Increasing commodity usage suggests a trickle down of APT techniques. So they download whatever the AppleScript is, double click, it launches, it goes into a script editor. If they click run, then it executes. Or if they can somehow get it over into like the terminal. So by default, whatever happens, it opens in the script editor when double clicked. Comments in the script encourage the user to run it while hiding the real code behind a large number of blank lines. So it looks, right, like, hey, this is all there is, but then they just put a ton of blank lines in here, and the actual malicious code is down here, not rendered on the screen. So probably, I guess, clicking press the play button, boop, to run it. So pivoting from the sample above, we can look at other similar script files like these ones. Similar analysis was published by Lopsec. And to add to the discussion, we note that the threat actor also used custom icons to make these fake documents appear more convincing. Look, it's totally a PowerPoint. So just like the fake DMG updates, we continue to see threat actors use fake websites to trick users into installing updates. Some of the lure sites are quite sophisticated. Let's see. And we also see that MaxInc uses this to drop a script, the script described in these other ones here, and the Odyssey Stealer. Interesting, this is going to learn.microsoft.com. Let's see. So as noted from other researchers, several of these Apple scripts still have 0 detections and virus total. Dude, that's because you don't get a lot of the telemetry you get on a Windows system is light years ahead of the telemetry you get on an Apple system. Apple tries so hard to keep you out of the kernel. And in fact, Windows is starting to boot some drivers out of the kernel initially, right? So what happened when CrowdStrike had their really bad update was they didn't just have a kernel level driver, they had what's called like an early insert kernel level driver. I forget the exact term of it, but it was like one of the very first things to load. And that was the one that was busted, and that's the one that was causing all the machines to blue screen. Hey, Kaiju, what's up, man? So now they're actually going to be restricting that down to stop that like early first load driver in some way. I read about it. I don't remember the exact details. I just know that they're restricting it down. Let's see. So the format's in Chinese, but it's slightly different. So this script will run this Apple script, which is an obfuscated read-only Apple script that drops another malicious DOG and so on. Clearly bad. It's bad. So on macOS, each file has a default icon. Normally, this icon is determined by the file's type. So for example, all text files have the same default icon. However, macOS allows users to assign custom icons to individual files and folders. This is stored in the file's resource fork, which can be preserved depending on how the file is delivered. So for example, if the file is delivered through a zip, then we can see the resource fork in the bundled item for the zip file. Oop, there it is. So when this is unzipped on a Mac endpoint, the custom icon will be displayed, resulting in a convincing fake document. So in the sample below, we see the attacker has provided a fake doc for both macOS and Windows. Oh, so they're using a malicious link file and they're using a malicious Apple script. Nice. Nice. And this also applies to all files on a Mac, like command, JS, TXT, and even those without extensions. So similar to the icon file, there's a profile setting for visibility of the file extension that is stored and is an extended attribute. Ugh, I hate that. So below is a demo, we see that the PPTX SCPT extension sample would look like this in the settings, where it hides the extension, and then it just looks like PPTX. Oh, that's funny. So similar to zip files, DMG files also preserve the icons of the file, and they become more common samples we've seen for the drag and drop to terminal DMGs, although we don't see many DMG samples including an Apple script. It would be surprising to see that technique grow in adoption. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Interesting. I have to start working on that because, like I said, at work, we're seeing a lot more clients where they're running a ton of Apple. They're like Mac-only shops. Literally, nobody has a Windows desktop except for like maybe an Azure VDI that they're using for testing. So, definitely information that I need. So the good and bad side about working, about whenever we're doing like offensive operations against Mac shops is you see a lot of stuff that's more difficult to do, but at the same time, some stuff that's easier to do. So they're setting the extensions to show. They've got some IOCs. Okay, cool. All right. Unfortunately, there, guys, I had some pretty important messages come in, so I do need to cut it a little short tonight. I apologize. Let's see if anybody's over on InfoSec streams. Ooh, Oreo's on. Wait, what's Hack the Box doing? Are they even actually still online? Nope. Is Oreo actually still online? Let me see. Yeah, Oreo's online. Cool. We're going to go right over to him. So, everybody, if you're wondering, I'm not pooping. We're going to be on right here, bro. Come on. So, over on Kick and YouTube, if you want to go say hello to Oreo Bite, he's a buddy of mine, and he's always doing some fun stuff. Looks like he's probably working on his malware obfuscator. Oh, no, I take it back. I think he's actually working on maybe Hack the Box. He's working with Shy Hat right now. So, awesome guy here. Let me go ahead and get the raid set up. And then, like I said, unfortunately, that's where I've got to end it for tonight. Let me get this all going here. All right. Guys, when y'all get in there, do me a favor. Drop a bunch of Hack the Planets and give him some love because he's an awesome guy. I like Oreo Bite. He's really great. You guys, the week's not over yet.
Keep crushing it. We got 2 days left in the week. Remember, Friday is read-only crushing it, though. That is to prepare for active crushing it mode on Monday. So keep it up. All y'all have been great. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, man. I love you guys. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your week, and also coming up next week into Thanksgiving. And actually, I've got something special planned for December around the week of Christmas. I'll let y'all know once I get that finalized. But that's all I got. There's no code to push tonight, Gumby. That's what I got. All right, guys. I want y'all to take care. Keep getting after it. And remember one thing really important. That is, I love you. Peace.